How's it going, everyone? It is your favorite apostates again for the second time this week. What's going on? I'm McKay.
I'm Jordan.
And I don't know why I was about to talk. I told Jordan that she could take it right off the start.
We are gathered here today for a very interesting video. I will tell you that. That is why we did not plan.
Jordan is announcing that she's going to be directing funerals now.
No.
We're gathered here today.
We are gathered here today. So I'm an associate licensed therapist in the state of Utah, which means what I do is, me as a person, I love working with couples. And so I primarily work with couples in the state of Utah. And you know what is a struggle for a lot of couples? One that is very challenging to navigate, that a lot of people in Utah face? Mixed faith marriages. When somebody leaves their church and decides that they don't want to be a part of it anymore, or when you have a really devoted member and maybe a more passive member, or when you have an atheist and a Mormon. And so this video caught my eye, obviously, for a few reasons, because as a therapist, I help couples with this, and hopefully I can provide some insights there. And then just from a human lens, McKay and I were both once devoted members of Mormonism who then decided to walk away. And even though we both left together and deconstructed together, our deconstructing journeys were different. And so I wanted to also highlight that as well. And so that's what we have come to discuss today. We initially weren't going to do a reaction to the 24 Hours with Paul and Morgan, because if you watched our video where we talked about them after the Shiny Happy People documentary, I said I didn't want to cover Paul and Morgan anymore, and I don't, because that video has officially ruined them for me forever. But this is just a video with Dave and Bethany's sentiments, and yes, it's because of their Paul and Morgan video, but I felt like from a couple who's deconstructed a religion that they once fully believed in, and as a couples therapist who helps couples through mixed faith marriages and other issues, I felt like this was a video that we could really offer some unique perspective on.
Let's get into it. I don't have a lot to say in the preamble, so.
We're good faith here. We're not here to hate. We all have our own feelings on Bethany because she's a very polarizing figure, but, you know, we'll just see what comes. We're going to roll with the tide.
Rolling with the punches. Let's go.
Okay.
All right, let's blow the lid off this month.
Babe!
I got you on camera smiling.
I thought that was a real dog for a second.
Nope, they definitely just bleeped out the F word.
Let's go.
I cursed.
Okay, let's do this.
Come on. It's third time's a charm. We've already restarted a couple times because we hate ourselves.
We were the stiffest.
You know what? That's
This is
really
me.
relatable.
This is me. Also, I know Dave is not drinking a Pepsi.
I don't know what that is.
I think it's a Pepsi. I don't know.
Grandmas you've ever seen in your
the
life.
grandma. Anyway, I'm not going to act out the grandma, but
We're like not stiff people, but we've tried to film this like 3 times, and we're not ourselves at all. We're just like this. We're like, and then Paul and Morgan came, and how was yours?
I'm locked 13 layers.
This is the most I
is
have
hard
ever seen them interact in this kind of way. This is like much more what I anticipate they are like behind the scenes, and I don't know that I've ever watched them act like this on camera before. They act like they like each other here.
Yeah.
A mind castle.
Guys,
I'm sorry, I have no space in here.
okay, that's
Are we
because
filming?
we don't ever film together.
Ah,
We need to film more.
we're so bad at this, but we'll get better.
Okay, this was when we went out on our very first date ever. Well, my dream, I told you this.
Story time.
This might be like really forward. On our very first date ever, I told you about like how I thought we were like really special and unique because we were really good friends at that point, and how I thought we could have like a YouTube channel or do something like that. And we've dabbled a little.
Okay, I'm just
We've
going to say
dabbled.
it here, and this might be a controversial opinion. Dave is looking at Bethany here like she hung the moon. He is 100% into it. I'm just saying.
A different vibe from what we've
An
seen.
absolutely different vibe.
Tried along the way a little bit.
But it's still my dream. Like, that's my dream, to do like YouTube or social media with you. So anytime we get to, even if we don't do it that often, so we have to kind of get back. This is so fun.
Maybe
This is very interesting.
maybe she should focus on that instead of her
Maybe that's why she has so
intercourse.
many other channels, because this is the one thing that she really wants to do, and so she's trying to find fulfillment in like all these other channels.
Could
But
be.
I mean, it's fair because you can't force your spouse into doing things you don't want them to do, or you shouldn't, I should say.
Yeah.
But that's interesting that that's like her big thing that she wants.
We have to get our YouTube legs back.
You just have so much to offer the world, and I love how we are together, and I feel like this side of me is so much more of like my real self, like the 24 hours with, and because I'm not teaching, like so much of what.
So I probably should have prefaced this at the beginning. This video that they're doing is in a reaction to the 24 hours video that they did with Paul and Morgan. Paul and Morgan went to their house, spent 24 hours with them, did various interviews, talked to them about things. They answered difficult questions. If you want to watch that video, my recommendation is to go to Funny Fridays. Jen and James reacted to the entire video. And so go watch that if you want that, like,
Context.
if you haven't gotten there yet. I will link that in the description.
People see of me on the Girl Defined channel, and it might be just like change it, but it's like
So don't do it.
it's like a different vibe. It's like teaching. It's like I'm a mentor, I'm a big sister. It's a different vibe, but this is really fun because it's just like whenever we are doing stuff, it's more like sharing our life, and I love it. So
All right.
Oh, it's not even
That
Pepsi.
says cola.
It's just grocery
You're a
store
Pepsi
brand.
hater.
That's better than Pepsi.
With that, let's get into our experience with, what did you say?
it's like, let him know. Convince him.
Oh,
Convince
you want
him
them
to
to
do it,
convince me.
yes.
Let's get into this. 24 hours with Paul and Morgan. They were
From a couples therapist perspective, if I saw this in my office, my initial thoughts would be, why are you here? Because this couple is very, I mean, I've never seen them act this way around each other. Maybe they have in like past like Dave and Bethany video, or, like in their couples channel videos, but this is giving me a very different perspective. And I think if people saw this more often, I think they would be less likely to criticize, because it doesn't seem like they're completely disengaged from each other.
I mean, just looking back to the Barbie review that they did, this is
entirely
these are different people.
here for the weekend, and
Nice.
we took a heck ton of footage. They took a heck ton of footage.
Oh my gosh.
A heckin' lot.
Which,
ton.
okay, shout out to Paul and Morgan. They were awesome, and they did such a good job facilitating our conversations and running around with the camera and being very non-invasive about it. And they were very respectful to all of the random stipulations about, don't film our kids and,
Don't film our neighbor.
W.
They should respect that. 101. Shame if they didn't.
Don't film our privacy.
So we wanted to kind of, keep some of that and keep it more focused on conversations and things like that. But it wasn't originally gonna, I wasn't gonna be in it nearly that much originally. Do you want to say what it was gonna be? I don't want to.
Oh, this is quick. Crack.
Oh my god, I feel like I am invading. I feel like I shouldn't be here right now. Is this... Okay, so we know...
I would be so uncomfortable.
We know the outcome
in
of
the
this
room.
video, and I'm wondering if the vibe has changed when you are more comfortable being your authentic self and being who you truly are. And so if finally coming forward and saying, I have deconstructed, which is a really big deal in any kind of religious
not
community.
everybody knows
I'm going
how
to put
this
it in the
ends
title.
up. Oh, okay, there you go.
So it's not really going to be a mystery
Okay.
by the time people
Spoiler
watch it.
alert.
But I'm wondering if that's why. Because now I don't have to pretend or, not disclose that part of myself, which it's totally fair to not, by the way. If at any point you're not ready or you don't want to share that publicly, that is your journey and yours to keep. I mean, yeah. But I'm wondering if that has influenced how he feels he can appear in front of the camera. I mean, think about it. He started off this video by swearing.
And they kept it in.
And they kept it in.
Okay.
It's not my video.
It was supposed to be a Girl Defined. It was supposed
Yeah.
to be like Kristen and Bethany, 24 hours with Girl Defined. Long story short, we couldn't make the schedules work, even literally over the months, because Kristen is an extremely busy person, and she homeschools her 2 boys full time.
Sounds like Kristen just didn't want to do it.
They're just extremely busy.
So
We
busy.
literally could not make the 3 of our schedules work together, and so it ended up being like, hey, we'll come stay with Bethany, and we'll film your life, and then maybe we'll be able to see Kristen a little bit, which they were only really able to see her for that little bit when we were doing the podcast stuff. So it just kind of like morphed. It really wasn't supposed to be a video about like Bethany with Girl Defined and then Dave, but it kind of became a video truly about me and then my life with you. So that was not part of the plan.
Yeah, and I kind of saw it, the wheels turning in Paul's head, as we're starting to have conversations here, at our house and about some of our differences, and he's like, "Hey, Morgan, I think this might be a good direction."
Yeah. Oh my God! That is such a good Paul impression. Oh my God, the cringe. Sorry for the baloney tail.
Oh. Hey, come find. There, set up camp.
And
it was like evolving as they were here.
They were great. Paul and Morgan were both a real joy to have here, and they were up for just about anything. They had hardly gotten here in our house, and I was like, "All right, cold plunge. You up for the cold plunge?"
Okay, if anyone wants a good time,
they were up.
That is a very abrasive way to start a relationship with someone.
For it.
Come to our house. Yeah. Dave, he'll be like busy working. He'll be like, "I've got so much to do," which you were saying. He was literally like, "I've got all these big projects. I'm so busy with work." And like the moment Paul and Morgan come, and it doesn't matter, anyone that we're like having over for anything, it's like the moment they walk in the door, you're like, Mr. Hostess with the mostest. Like, anyone need drinks?
Green flag.
I'm just sitting here kind of speechless that this is who we're seeing, because I feel like we're looking at entirely different people.
Yeah, right.
Candy, like, let's go cold plunge. Like,
you going to that thing? We're going to that.
He's the best.
It was great. It was really cool, driving around and just having these conversations with them, and they were great question askers. And
well, it started with you. I picked them up at the airport. We weren't filming at all. We come here, and they knew, like, I had to leave right away to go film with Kristen. Like, we have very limited recording spots because we're both moms, and it's super busy. Like I mentioned, her schedule. So we literally, Kristen and I record like once a month together, and it just happened to be that day. So I was like, I have to go, and then Paul and Morgan were going to come for the last hour, and then they'd come home with me and we start filming. So Dave was kind of like, they weren't planning on hanging out with you because you were so busy. But as soon as they walked in the door, you were like, "Hey." And so,
you mean he didn't want to participate maybe a little? I wouldn't. I'm not going to put words in his mouth, but.
Yeah.
Sometimes I get very busy when certain people would like to come over as well.
It's me.
No,
I'm people.
It's not.
But it ended up being like this.
It's time for a break.
It was this whole afternoon, like hours with you, that was completely like unplanned. So that was kind of cool.
I feel like I was already planning to go to the cold plunge, though. I don't think I was that busy because I was mowing the lawn.
I don't know. You kept emphasizing to me like, "I'm really busy with work."
Well, before they got here, because I didn't want it to be like a big thing where we had anyway. But it turned into a big thing, and in a good way, and it was a lot of fun and challenging, and brought up a lot of things for us in our relationship. And if you watch the video, which if you haven't seen the video, go watch the video.
Yeah, watch it before.
If you're interested, if you're not interested in random people on the internet,
go watch it on Fundy Fridays.
Yes, please.
Then do not watch this video. But if you are, then watch it, and it should be fairly clear that there's some differences that we have and things that came up, and it was a lot of it was some really good.
When you have differences with Paul and Morgan, generally that's a good thing.
Really good conversations. Actually, I think really benefited our marriage in a lot of ways.
In the long run.
She's like, I have faith.
Maybe it was rough for a minute, which is fair. If you got some deep differences in opinion on things, it's hard to navigate.
That someday.
No, I didn't mean that.
There will have had been some benefits of said weekend.
I was thinking the long run since that video till now is
okay. This is the long run.
This is the long run.
I got you. Okay. That's great. And I would say the number one benefit is just honesty, just bringing up the sorts of conversations that we have, but we hadn't had conversations like we did in the video in that topic. We had very honest conversations in other areas of our lives, but in that specific topic of specifically like the outward facing Bethany and the world and Girl Defined and the critics and all this stuff, we hadn't really.
Is that us? The critics?
Who?
The critics?
Am I the drama?
Gone there for a while like that deeply.
Because we know we disagree.
Because we know there are some disagreements. And
so it's like, why rehash it? We haven't ever gotten to the point where we see eye to eye. So it's like, we know, it's just kind of like we agree to disagree. And that encompasses a lot, not just like how we view in that conversation. It was like the haters, but it's like beliefs, what I do with Girl Define, the stuff I write about, talk about. We've known we don't see eye to eye convictions wise on some of that stuff. So it can just be stressful to like rehash it when you know, like, why are you going to rehash it? We know we don't agree. So like, let's just keep moving forward.
Yeah. Well, we will rehash it if apparently a small film crew comes to town to watch us. Then we'll rehash it a little bit, which we did. And it was really, it was good. It brought up a lot of really interesting, good things to, rehash.
So first off, I just want to say, like, anyone who's giving Paul Morgan any grief from that
let's talk about
video,
the grief.
Oh, I'm so here for the grief.
Yeah, right.
Give me the tea. I want to hear about it.
Paul and Morgan.
they came and stayed with us. Like, we got a firsthand look at these people, and we've known that. Like, we've been together with them in person one other time, and we've just connected through, like, now, like, as friends, long distance, because they're just awesome people. But they're so amazing, and they were so kind and genuine and like so full of integrity and like to their word on everything they said. They gave us the final, like say on anything in the video to like have it removed, whatever. Like they are just so awesome. And like as a married couple behind the scenes, it's like we have seen them and they are just so kind to one another. Like Paul is so kind.
Which, okay, so I'll give them that they're trying to be respectful about the way they're filming, but here's the rub. Like that's what they should be doing. Like that's like
you are literally
basic.
their content.
They are making money off of you. So don't act like they're doing you a favor here, because they're not. You're doing them a favor by probably giving them, I would guess, probably the highest viewed video they've probably ever had. My guess. I haven't looked at numbers, and I refuse to watch it on their channel, and you should too. Go watch it on Funny Fridays. But the idea that this has merit, I'm like, that's great. They were able to put together a 24-hour video. Lovely. We like great, you guys. You make content. I'm not going to like pat you on the back for it. But this is like fundamentals 101. They're making content off of you guys. So really they should be doing that just and courtesy. More because you're doing them a favor.
Yeah.
Into like taking care of Morgan, and Morgan's like so kind to him. They're just an awesome couple. Like we're genuinely inspired by their marriage and by them being here.
I wouldn't be. As a therapist, even I wouldn't.
After all I've seen in that relationship, I don't know, on YouTube,
from what they've displayed,
there's nothing to.
I wouldn't encourage that.
I was inspired by Paul. By the time they left, I had a couple thoughts. One was like, I really like them, kind of like I wish they would stay, that sort of thing, because I thought they were great. We would totally hang out with them if they lived here and all this. And I thought I was particularly inspired by Paul and the way that he treated Morgan with respect and with care. And
is this the same Paul that I know of? Is this the same Paul that was really encouraging Morgan to get back to the gym, like basically as soon as she had the baby?
The same guy that makes her cover up her butt when she posts on social media? Is this the same guy that like makes comments about her eating habits? Is this the same guy that after she made a comment on stream that he didn't like, he made her apologize for it to the audience? Are we talking about the same guy? Because the actual Paul, like the real life Paul, may be entirely different, because we always have the...
I don't know why he would be taking on a different persona.
I don't know why, but we always give the caveat of we don't know. It's like the same thing as when therapists, like when people over the internet try to diagnose people. Like we only know what parts of themselves that they choose to project on their YouTube channel. We only know what's curated, what they've curated for us for social media. So do we know these people? No. Do we know what they put up here, and can we analyze it and people can be judgmental and be happy about it or mad about it or whatever? Absolutely. But there's always the potential that people are totally different than what they portray online. So that's always the caveat I give, and that's why professional, like mental health professionals, cannot and should not diagnose people over the internet, because you don't know them. Like, we don't know them. We know the content and what they're forward facing, putting out on the internet. And so we can make judgments based off that. And that's, they have haters, we have haters, like, we get it.
Yeah.
But this is interesting.
It is a little alarming sometimes when those are the types of things that people are comfortable putting out there.
Yep. That's always like a big red flag.
Her and it just, I liked their dynamic, and I liked the way they related to each other in a lot of ways. I felt inspired to be a better husband.
We saw you over there from across the cafe, and we really enjoyed your vibe.
In a non-sexual way.
In a God-honoring way.
God-honoring way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that anyone who's giving any grief, or even like, I don't know, whatever the reels they're posting or things they're saying now, it's like people just want to find something about it, but we have like nothing but good things to say about. I mean, I think that's true.
I'm glad that they're nice to each other in front of other people, because they're sure as shit not nice to each other in front of their audience. So I'm glad they were nice to each other in front of you two.
Well, I'm very positive. I'm just very positive about them and about,
After the hard conversation, we've had a couple of hard weeks.
Yeah.
In the sense that like we've just pressed into a lot of this stuff rather than just like moving on. We've just like really been like, hey, it's been more of like let's just like be super honest and like seek outside counsel. We had our literally a few days after Paul and Morgan were here, you had our pastor come over. We literally were sat in our living room for like 3 hours. Yeah. He was just kind of like a third party listening to like the 3-hour version of what you saw at the dinner table, like, and so much more, just trying to like figure out like, okay, what do I need to change? Does he need to change? What if we just can't, like, we just see differently? How can we love each other still? How can we give each other grace?
So this, I think, is really important, and I think it's important to underscore this for people who aren't religious, because if you belong to really most, like, fundamentalist type religions, and Mormonism included, when this kind of stuff happens, when you have somebody who has a shift in beliefs or starts to deconstruct or anything along those lines, it can be catastrophic for a marriage. It can be absolutely catastrophic. Like, I think it's gotten somewhat better in recent years, but within Mormonism, like, I've had people who have told me that their experiences were the second that their partner started questioning, like, their marriage was on the rocks, and ultimately the other partner couldn't take it, and they filed for divorce. And so in Mormonism, it's not common for one partner to leave if the other partner is deconstructing, as it's almost like non-negotiable, not even like it's almost expected.
Yeah.
And it's like, I signed up for this marriage because of what Mormonism believes, that I have to have a partner, I have to have a husband or a wife to get me into the celestial kingdom. And if I don't have that, into exaltation, then I'm not going there. So basically which is heartbreaking for that other spouse, because it's like, you married me because you loved me, but now I feel like I'm just kind of a pawn in the game of getting you to exaltation. But I also, which you can argue whether that's healthy or harmful, but I can also see where lots of people, their non-negotiables when they're dating someone is they have the same belief system. They have the same religion. Like, it's going to minimize conflict typically if that's the case. And so they go into that marriage with the expectations that it'll always be that way, and that they'll have a priesthood leader in the home who can preside over the family, and that's important. And so when these kinds of things happen, I can only imagine the stress and anxiety that potentially these two are feeling, because it does have massive implications for the relationship. And what Bethany just described is exactly how I see a lot of people process it. Do I need to change, or does he need to change? And that's like the first mentality that people enter into, because I think of the rigidity of religion. It's like, well, I need to either move or you need to move, because it's hard to imagine being on entirely different pages and having a healthy relationship. Is it possible? Yes. Is it also very challenging? Absolutely, yes.
I just think about you and I, how it was, I mean, especially within Mormonism, it's just a huge part of your lives together. And it's part of, like, one of the building blocks that you really put your whole relationship together upon. And I don't know, in almost all situations, I feel like it is that kind of dynamic where if you're getting married in the temple, almost never is it something that is like you can compromise on. Like, regularly you see posts in r/Exmormon where people are asking for advice or direction because they essentially, their spouse wants to get divorced so that they can move on with their eternal progression and have an eternal companion who's going to get them to exaltation, or even going as far as to kind of ostracizing them from their kids because they believe that they're in a fallen state or they're being influenced by Satan, and they don't want their kids to be lost by that influence in their lives. So I feel like in Mormonism and similar high demand religions, it could be at times almost worse, because there's that whole eternal family dynamic where if you decide to apostatize, then you're leaving that entire dynamic behind and essentially ruining that for the people in your family.
So I'm compassionate and empathetic to them in many senses, but in that sense as well, because it is a scary thing when you kind of enter that space and you're like, well, what do we do?
For real.
And it's been like one thing like that after another, I feel.
Yeah. So a lot of people are wondering, Dave, to what he sounds like he's deconstructing, to what degree?
Yeah.
And you have people
This is what we came for.
Let's go.
that are kind of more like, oh, he's a Christian but nice, or he's like not. He's just compromised his faith, or he doesn't have strong faith, or whatever.
Or some people are mad at Paul for like insinuating
Mad at Paul for
that you're deconstructing.
Yeah, which I would say in that case, with Paul and I, we also had more private conversations, and so Paul's operating with more information than what you see in the video, and so get up off Paul,
Well, I'm not anywhere near him, so not a problem for me.
So the bottom line is I had a new level of mental crisis that week that Paul and Morgan were here, and it started before they got here with some random men's group stuff I was doing, and as well as certain questions that I was asking. Even while Paul and Morgan were here, I was asking some people that know me pretty well, or what are my greatest weaknesses, and
You were inviting all this criticism.
I was inviting a lot of criticism. I did this thing called, this like hot seat thing where you sit there and these guys kind of like, you stand or sit there and the guys poke at you and try to kind of get you to, get provoked, and then we talk about it.
That sounds healthy. But I will say,
interesting.
This also highlights an aspect of deconstruction, which I think many people go through, which everybody's deconstruction journey is different. But I think this highlights an aspect of it where you really have to turn, like deconstruction requires a turn inward.
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot of like you break down the religious stuff, but then there's also your values, there's politics, there's how you view the world, there's how you view yourself,
your relationships.
There's like, what does this mean about me if I don't have this larger thing that kind of is a very heavy presence in my life? And if I remove that, what's left? Like, who am I? Like, it's a very like self-reflective process.
I feel like deconstruction has kind of become this like catch-all boogeyman term for like, oh, they just want to go off and they don't want to be part of whatever.
Right, they're just
anymore.
Bad Christians or they're bad Mormons or whatever.
Or things like that. And I mean, by and large, that is in part due to the fact that people who deconstruct sometimes leave religion altogether and leave the belief in God behind and everything like that.
It
like
happens.
me. It happens.
It's a spectrum, though. Just because you deconstruct doesn't, like, there's plenty of Mormons who still believe in God. There's plenty of Mormons who join other religions. There's plenty of Mormons who are atheists. There's like, it's a spectrum of where you can go from there.
I mean, even looking at Paul and Morgan essentially did a little bit of deconstruction when they left charismatic.
Whatever their whole thing was.
They deconstructed that idea and they decided that is not for us. That's not what we believe in. And then they, made changes to more align their lives the way that they believe.
Deconstruction is not synonymous with like you're a godless atheist, horrible person. Is generally
some
what
of us
assume.
are, but
not a horrible person.
Not a horrible person. I like to think I'm nice.
Talk about what comes up.
So it was kind of a rough week before Paul and Morgan got there because you were like having all this like inviting all this criticism into your life, and you were kind of like,
I was grumpy, and then I found. Jesus. One of the things that got me through?
What?
For the first time in, 15 years, Billy Joel releases a new song.
Oh, yes, that's right.
And it is...
Fair. That's fair.
Music, man.
Secular music, might I add.
Speaks to the soul.
Phenomenal. And I loved it so much. Maybe you love me, maybe you don't.
Probably going to have
We're 100% getting this.
I was mowing the lawn before.
Is this the theater kid lore that we've
Oh,
been looking for.
100%. As a
On
fellow
Dave.
theater kid, yes. Yes.
Or Paul and Morgan got here and I was listening to this song and I might have been crying, I don't know. And
Because he's a crime.
Oh, I'm very interested to see what Bethany has to say about this.
W.
because I'm crying, man. And it's such a good song if you haven't heard it.
Let's just highlight that's healthy. Healthy. It is normal and productive. And I
Right.
even encourage men to cry. We have toxic masculinity, especially in like religious spaces, has invaded this idea that's become very pervasive that like crying is synonymous with like being a baby and like, man, you're just such a like grow up.
Yeah.
Like, what are you
Man
gonna do? Cry about it? Like, it's very
Yeah.
toxic and it damages men. And so, I am here for this and being open about it.
And so I was already already in that space. And then we had a ton of conversations with Paul and Morgan and with Bethany about all these things. And I have a lot of differences with Paul, Morgan, and Bethany when it comes to just ideologically and,
Color me surprised.
values, Christianity, all kinds of stuff. So then we had the dinner table conversation. That was the first day they were here. It's edited, like
they
it was the
started off
last
deep.
thing, but it actually happened earlier.
The first day.
And then the next day, there was more stuff, more conversations, and in pickleball, which by the way, they absolutely crushed us on. They
destroyed our
they
guts.
ate our lunch on. Yeah,
They
was
ate our lunch.
Okay.
What does that mean?
I think
Is that
that's a
some
phrase,
southern thing? I'm
maybe?
too western to know.
that was some poorly edited content, and I mean that in the sense that it did not give you a realistic picture of what actually happened. They kicked our butts.
Extremely gracious.
100%. And they were very kind and all that. Yeah. But they were very good. They're much better than we are. But next time, we'll see. So then
Brush
I
up on your game.
had more emotional, issues and crashes and stuff. And it had to do with our marriage. And it had to do with, like, love. And it had to do with faith and God and Jesus and surrender versus, like pull it together and just like, and basically what happened from all of that is there's a lot of different points that I won't get into because it takes so long. But what basically happened is I got to this point of like, I've been circling deconstruction, just to use the term loosely. I'm okay with the term.
I'm not against it.
You're not against it.
I'm not against it at all. I think there's this
yeah.
misconception that I'm against it, but it's more just like when you typically hear the term deconstructing, like
Yeah.
I typically think of someone like completely deconstructing from their faith. And yes, I am
What did we just
What
say?
did we just say?
deconstructing certain parts of my
Yeah.
faith, but I personally am still very much like a believer in Jesus and very much think what the, like trying to understand the word and living it out practically is important. So I don't want to be labeled. I don't really care for the label, I guess,
Yeah.
but I'm okay with it anyway.
Yeah, and I'm okay with the term for sure, and I'll often use it. I know it's popular and it's kind of, rings a bell, so it's kind of easy. But there are kind of two different types of deconstruction that I think of when it comes to the popular stuff that is kind of happening in this trend, the trend that's happening. And one is it's almost like you're consciously deconstructing in the sense of you're actively questioning beliefs and like, is this true? Is that true? And it's almost like you're taking things apart. And then there's the kind of deconstruction where people describe it as pulling a thread and it's just kind of like the whole thing falls apart. It's like you're not even going towards everything. It's just kind of like everything's sort of crumbling and then you're just in this crisis mode and nothing's left. And I would say for me,
I feel like that's a lot of Mormonism.
Well, and I feel like, I counsel people who are struggling with deconstruction, and I see both sides of that spectrum and everywhere in between all the time. And sometimes you have people that are subconsciously deconstructing for years and didn't know it. Like there's a lot to the term deconstruction. I completely agree. And it is a hot button for a lot of conservatives and a lot of people who are like in fundamental religions, because they hear that and they're like deconstructing atheist, and they've just like made like a connection there immediately. And so, but I have, for a lot of people, like the thread unraveling once you start to pull at it, I think is what happens for a lot of Mormons.
Yeah. I've seen a lot of talk lately. I don't know. I think I've more would consider it cope, because they're trying to paint a narrative that people are deconstructing, but inevitably it doesn't stick or whatever, and they return. And I feel like maybe there is a little bit, because I do know that there are people out there who they stumble upon something within Mormonism and they get freaked out, and it's like that thread being pulled, and then they're in an unstable situation, which I think in a lot of cases can be a good thing. I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. And then if you're really in the Mormon bubble, your entire family might be saying things or sending you little blurbs or talks from general authorities and people, and they're able to kind of use that instability to reel you back in.
Yep. It happens a lot.
As long as they can touch on the right points and be like, oh, well, this is disproven, or this isn't like what it seems, or
material.
This is just moral relativism and things like that. Then they can kind of reel the people back in. Because I feel like I kind of had that. I, as a teenager, was not seeing eye to eye with what the church was. I had no desire to go on a mission or anything like that. And that kind of instability, I feel like, drove me to the point where I was like, oh, well, maybe I should give this a better shot, and ended up, wasting 2 years of my life in a foreign country, which ultimately was kind of the gateway for me leaving for good. But
I think it's not productive I think deconstruction isn't incompatible with religion.
No.
There are people that I have worked with who ultimately know all the things about Mormonism and choose to stay for whatever reason. Like, I've worked with people who have choose to stay for the community. Like, don't believe a damn thing the church says about anything, but appreciates some of the values that the church teaches in the community. And would that work for me? Absolutely not. But does that work for some people? Absolutely. Yeah. And so that should be wherever just deconstruction takes you, as long as it is a place where it feels like it is compatible with your values and you are not having to sacrifice authenticity, then that is the place to be. Yeah. And it is not just I've decided to deconstruct one day and one day deconstructing is over. I mean, I would argue to this day we probably still deconstruct some elements of things that we've had to internalize and learn, because deconstruction comes with all parts. It comes with, like we said, having to deconstruct beliefs around your relationship, around, monogamy, around, like, that's really common for Mormons. People are always like, why do all these Mormons get into, like, swinging and shit? Because a lot of people who deconstruct the concept of monogamy.
Which I honestly, within Mormonism, is kind of just like par for the course, because that polygamy is a principle that was taught within Mormonism. So
polygamy is said to be practiced in the afterlife as well, and so there's some interesting kind of uniqueness there. And people, anytime we do like a question box, people will ask us like if we're swingers and shit, and so, which is like, if you live that lifestyle and you live it in a healthy way and all adults are consenting, great.
Shout out.
But this is just it's like the iceberg. It's like the image of the iceberg, right? Where just the tip top is above 100%. The water, and then all the other stuff is happening underneath. And that's exactly, I think, how we could describe like what we see with Dave. It's like all of us, I think we look to him because we've been there before and we know how it feels, and we know how, like, there are plenty of people who seek out therapy because they are struggling so deeply with deconstructing, because it threatens everything it's destabilizing. Like I describe it as an earthquake, right? Like it literally shatters things for you, and if it doesn't shatter things, then it shakes it up to a point where you feel unstable. And sometimes it brings up like mental things, like I often see anxiety and depression and things just as you navigate. And so I think a lot of religious people assume like, oh, well, you're mentally ill while you're deconstructing, that's a sign you shouldn't be doing it. And it's like, no, you're pulling at the thread that's woven throughout your life, and then going, oh God.
Yeah.
And everything is everywhere, and it's just total chaos. And it's really hard to muck through that without support. And so I think a lot of us can empathize with Dave, which is why a lot of us are like, quote unquote, rooting for him. I'm not necessarily rooting for him to get anywhere. I'm just hoping that he ends up in a place that's consistent with his values and beliefs without feeling any shame about that, and in a relationship that supports that.
Yeah.
And it seems as though Bethany does, which is not an easy thing to do with a spouse. So, we'll see what happens. Yeah, especially when
when
you're very religious
and you have a whole
it's your
career
job
centered around it. Yeah. It's just like when you're born into religion, essentially the house of your life is constructed on this foundation of religion. And as you're deconstructing that, you basically just have to watch everything else fall down. So it's hard. And if that's something that he hasn't really brought up in the past, I completely understand.
It feels a little bit more towards the first one, but I'm sure there's probably a mix. The things that changed for me through the course of that weekend with Paul and Morgan, and actually we were at Zach and Kristen's one night, and there was some conversation there, and through the course of all this, and then these moments of like surrendering, trying to just find my identity in Christ and get strength through that, and to be more emotionally stable and all of this stuff. It basically, something broke over that week, and I didn't feel.
Paul and Morgan broke his shelf.
They are a rather weighty topic.
That is like me simplifying this to a degree that might be offensive. I'm not trying to be offensive. I just find that was a joke. I'm sorry if it was in poor taste.
Tied down anymore to like basically anything that would keep me from fully questioning my beliefs and my faith when it comes to this stuff. And I even found myself wanting Christianity to not be true just because of my own personal experiences with trying to have it be real in my own life, and just the disappointment that I found where it hasn't my perspective, it hasn't really seemed to help me. It hasn't really seemed to make me any more of a better husband or a better man. It seems like when I do other things that are more taking charge of my own development, it seems like I improve more. And then it seems like when I try to find my identity in Christ, it just doesn't seem to work.
Wow, this is
deep.
Very.
I am shocked that they're going forward with this. Bethany, okay, I'm going to say this, and this doesn't mean that you take this and run with it, because if you do this, then the entire Fundy Snark community is going to be pissed at me. But if you're watching this, if you want an angle that's going to appeal to people en masse, it's mixed faith marriage.
Oh, yeah.
If you make content about having a mixed faith marriage and how you both handle that from each of your perspectives, as the like more religious one and as the one that has decided maybe religion isn't the way for me, there are tons of people in that space who benefit from seeing other people in that position. So Funny Snark community, don't get mad at me if that's what she starts to do. I'm just saying, if you want content,
in all honesty,
this is very relatable.
She's probably going to catch more friendly fire than not.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
To this point where it's like, I hope this isn't true, because I don't want to go through life always having to think I'm the worst in order to find the life in Christ.
Oof.
And that whole thing where it sort of requires you to feel really bad, or to at least admit, you're just sort of nothing and you have nothing. And so that's why you need Jesus. And isn't that such great news? It's like, it's just stopped being good news for me, because it's like, this is basically, if it's not working for me, then the answer is always, well, you really need to know God's love more, or
it's always on you.
It's
always your fault. You're not doing enough. You're not going to the temple often enough. You're not reading the Bible often enough. It's always going to come back to you. It's never going to be, this is an institutional problem, or this is a secular issue. It's a you problem. You're not doing it. You're not working hard enough. It's a you problem.
You can't be preaching a gospel that's inherently flawed and be able to exert that kind of control over people. It has to be the people who are flawed. The gospel is the right thing.
100%.
And that's how you keep butts in pews and stuff like that. Or, as we've seen with the entire deconstruction movement, that's exactly what gets butts out of the pews.
Yep.
Or you're not trusting him, or you just need to find your identity in him and rest in that. And so it's like, it just becomes another work. Like, I'm not resting enough. Why isn't this working? It's, so there was some frustration there. In addition to all the truth claims and all the things that have been circling for the last...
Ooh, truth claims. It's been a while since I've heard that verbiage.
I'm wondering what the truth claims are in that context.
Because there are Mormon truth claims that we had to deconstruct.
Yeah.
And that was very painful.
That was hard.
8 years for me, even before we were married.
Ooh.
You know, all that stuff has been there. I've been very aware of a lot of arguments and podcasts and people and debates and all kinds of stuff. It's not like I've just been in this community where I don't hear influences. It's like I've known a lot about this stuff.
For sure. This wasn't the last
and over time, I've read more books and I've learned more and I've seen more, you know. And so, but I've felt constrained by myself, my own inability or lack of desire to challenge certain institutions that I'm a part of or challenge certain communities, because that would throw things into chaos. That would, you know, it would be hard to go to church. It would be hard to be married to Bethany. It would be hard to do a lot of these things. I'm established in Christian community, so it just makes it because of my own choice to be.
And this is by design, right?
Yeah.
Mormonism is structured this way too. Single people largely feel excluded from Mormonism, even if they've tried, like even like people who have been divorced, or it's not inherently set up to be supportive of people who do not follow the designated life path to a T as much as maximally possible, right?
Yeah.
And so that and they use that to their advantage. Like, and that's why a lot of people struggle leaving Mormonism, because it's like, I feel like I'm leaving a community. I feel like I'm leaving my people behind. People are going to judge me. Like, the shelf is stacked with things and reasons to stay, even if they're not for like being authentically myself, but just because they're hard. And churches use that to their advantage.
Yeah. I mean, in this day and age where third spaces are few and far between, when you're in like a high demand religion or just like any church, that essentially can be your third place. And you have to give up that third place just because you start to not really agree with the things that are being said in that third place.
And what does it mean for our marriage? Does that change our marriage? Does that change that my spouse is going to want to be with me? What does this mean for our kids? Like, these are the conversations that I often see playing out in couples therapy before we even get to like, what does this mean for our relationship?
Yeah.
We're looking down the road at like, people are like, well, when my kids are teenagers, like, what are you going to say? Like, people put a lot of thought into what this means and the impact. And so this can be a very isolating place to be.
Christian community makes it challenging if I'm going to basically say, hey, I don't think I'm a Christian anymore. But over the course of the weekend with Paul and Morgan and with other people, I basically got to a point where it wasn't enough of a reason for me to not take that next step. And for me, it's like just kind of acknowledging all of my questions and doubts just all at once and just being like, actually, I'm not sure this is true. I kind of hope it's not. You know, I say that, but
that is a very powerful, as scary as that place is to be, like, speaking personally, getting to that space where I could acknowledge it like openly and speak it and speak power to it out loud. That was a very liberating and powerful place to be amid like the scariness and the unsettling and the chaos. That was a very powerful place once I was able to get to that point.
Yeah.
And many people deconstruct for decades before they do anything publicly or acknowledge it or even acknowledge it to themselves. So this is a common process.
It's the like the opposite of the leap of faith, really,
100%.
when you think about it.
It's like that's a lot for Bethany to go through.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I feel like there's a lot packed in there. It's definitely not just been since like the Paul and Morgan thing. I feel like you've had a new level of boldness or a new level of freedom to share those things since that weekend. But like, you've been studying this stuff and thinking about this for like years.
And in fact, 1 year ago, almost 1 year ago, because it was the time of Lent, but last year, I had something like this happen where I had all of these, I was like talking to my pastor and I was like, I'm not sure I should be taking communion and whatever. And we had the question of whether to become members and all this stuff. And basically at that time, I was still kind of in this, okay, I can kind of like make the leap of faith. And so I just sort of took this leap of like, all right, I can believe, I don't know it, and I can't, this is not so rational, but I'll just like, okay, that's what faith is. Faith is just kind of,
winging it,
dedicating yourself and trusting and, okay, so I can, I say, but I believe even though I don't like feel it, because what is belief anyway, And,
wow, that is exactly lying for the Lord.
Lying for the Lord.
Yeah, people would say I don't know, maybe other places they say this too, but a testimony is found in the bearing of it.
Yep.
Where you just say it and you'll eventually start to believe it.
Which can actually even be considered a high demand religion or a cult tactic when you're chanting things or repeating things to yourself until you believe them. Like that's extremely unhealthy. But all of these things are used to their advantage, which makes it hard to abandon it because there is no they say Christianity is supposed to be hard. Faith is supposed to be hard. Like if, getting back to Jesus is worth it and he didn't make it easy. Things like that. And so again, it always centers back to it's a me thing. It's a me problem.
You're just not working hard enough.
You're not doing enough. There's something wrong with you.
You're not cut out for this.
I kind of used just relativism on myself and be like, well, we don't know anyway, so you just might as well dedicate yourself or whatever. And so, okay, all right, I'm a Christian and I can hold this and I can, whatever. And so that happened a year ago, and I stayed in the Christian community, but as kind of like giving assent to this stuff and taking communion and being a part of this. And so that's what's different now. I basically got to a point where I was like, I don't need to hold up any of that. I don't need my friends to think that I'm one of them in this sense. I don't need people on the internet to think. I mean, that's not really as much of a concern, I would say, in some ways. But it's really more like my marriage, my church community, basically the life that I have. A lot of my work has been in the Christian space, so it's just so much of that. It feels like I finally got the balls to basically be honest about things that I've thought for a long time.
Good for you, dude. I'm not rooting for you to leave religion. I'm just rooting for you to get where you want to be in order to be your authentic self. Yeah,
exactly.
That's all I hope for you.
I mean, he's painting kind of the picture that we've been talking about where a lot of who he was and the things that he does was rooted within that system of thinking and everything like that. So it just makes it so much harder to speak up and be like, this is what I think, and I know that it's going to, ruffle some feathers.
I do, and I know Bethany hasn't spoken too much about this. I will say she's very engaged in what he's saying. I'm used to her listening to Kristen and not caring.
Where she's just...
or allegedly not caring.
Or bopping herself in the head with a folder.
Right, literally. But at the same time...
We kid.
I have a lot of compassion for her because even though this is their channel, like their combined channel, this is going to be shared on her platforms and on people of like her Girl Defined followers are obviously going to hear about it. And this has implications for her. And I'm not saying that she should be bothered by it, but there will be very devout religious people in her community that will have a lot of judgment for Dave and will have a lot of judgment for her for staying with someone potentially who is not a devoted follower of Christ, because there are lots of people in religious communities who do not have the psychological flexibility, I'll say, to handle something like this in a kind, mature, and empathetic way. And so there is risk for Bethany here because people are going to comment on it. People are probably going to say unkind things, and she's used to that. She's used to criticism, right? Like we criticize her for questionable things she does.
Well, I mean, she's even caught flack from her Girl Defined community for
the sex stuff.
Yeah, for the sex stuff.
Which if she doesn't address it, I'll bring it up at the end, but I have a theory on why the sex stuff is happening now. But there is also, I think, as far as their connection goes, I think there's an element of emotional intimacy here that might be different because going through a deconstruction process with the spouse, even if you aren't the one deconstructing, does have the opportunity to create a lot of intimacy, not in a sexual way, but just in an emotional, in-depth way, because you're tapping into, like, the soul. Like you're tapping into who you are on a very deep and vulnerable level. And for a lot of couples, I have found that the deconstruction process, as hard as it is, can create a lot of intimacy and can strengthen marriage regardless of what the outcome of the deconstruction process is. And so I'll say that is a possibility. And we know, since Bethany is talking about it all the time, that it sounds like their sex life has greatly improved. And so I would not doubt that that has large implications for their relationship as well. When you're having good sex, you tend to feel better about the relationship. And so I would not doubt that that might be playing a role in their connection looking differently here than we've seen in a long time.
And I have to apologize to Bethany because I haven't always been honest with her. And when we got married, I had already started deconstruction. And I had read quite a lot fewer books when we got married, and had listened to podcasts and stuff, and was already very friendly towards certain forms of progressive Christianity and stuff like that. And when I got married to Bethany, I thought, well, this is going to be a problem because, and I wanted Bethany, and I love her. And so at the time I was like, this is just going to cause problems in our relationship. So I was just like, all right, I believe that the Bible is your word, and I accept this authority, and blah, blah, blah. And I just kind of tried
This is a very common experience with couples who are deconstructing. Even if they weren't deconstructing at marriage, it is very interesting to me that he was already at that point, even when they got married, and had some awareness of it. Because I encounter couples all the time who say things like, I've been thinking this way for years. Like, I thought this as a teenager. And they're not always forthright about that in their marriage because they don't necessarily, in my opinion, they don't necessarily need to be. That's a very personal opinion, especially if they're not going to act on it. Like, it's almost like Mormons like it to having doubts. Like, I have doubts about my faith, but everybody has doubts about their faith, so you just suck it up and you move on. And that's exactly what happens, but a lot of times the deconstruction thing doesn't go away, or it starts to become a problem, or, and it just becomes a barrier. And so it's interesting to me to see kind of how he's held that, and probably also feels some guilt about that for not being completely transparent with Bethany about it. But I'm going to cut, like, from a therapist perspective, I'm always going to go towards what's the intent here. Like, impact matters, but in a situation like this, what's the intent? Like, the intent was, I love this person, I love my wife, and I'm committed to being a part of this religion because I want it to be true, or I want it, like, I know it's important to my wife or whatever.
Yeah.
So the intent there is very pure and thoughtful and empathetic. And he didn't go into this marriage probably thinking, I'm going to leave my faith one day and that's going to suck for my wife. Like, generally nobody does that.
No.
And so that's a lot to carry on your shoulders as a person in a relationship, in a marriage.
Yeah.
And so I would even liken that to being something that's kind of taken some of the pressure off their relationship, that he's able to be open and honest about that.
I mean, it's a really, although the implications of those types of decisions are kind of grim sometimes, especially when you're like, you hold these opinions and you set them aside and you just go along with things, and then later down the road that ends up being something that you can't reconcile within your marriage or whatever. But the intention, I mean, it really speaks to how much he cares about Bethany, because that is something that she really wanted. Mm-hmm. And he was like, okay, well, I'm going to give it my best shot. And to see that Bethany is reacting in a way that's not like extreme disgust.
Yeah.
And she's actually, she wants to hear what he has to say. She wants to broadcast what he has to say on YouTube.
I'm telling you, that is a big deal for her, to know the platform and the audience she has, and to still speak openly about this, and potentially, we haven't gotten through the whole video yet, but support him in that. That's a big deal for her.
I mean, she's still in the room, so
yeah,
that's a good.
And they're
the
still
video
married.
got uploaded. So
yeah, absolutely.
That's a good sign.
Push myself over the edge to make it work. And that was disingenuous and a lack of integrity, honestly. And at the time, it was a weak thing to do. And I didn't really know how.
I would push back on that.
I don't necessarily think it's a weak thing to do.
As a therapist, I would question where that is coming from, because that to me sounds rooted in shame or guilt.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't label it as that. That sounds to me like a part of ourselves that might be speaking from a place of shame.
Could be.
It's like stand up and just
But
say,
the feeling is valid.
This is what I think, in the face of the anxiety that it could cause both in other people and in myself. So that's kind of changed. And
that is also a dynamic that I want to hit on here for a lot of people who are deconstructing. There is this idea of, every family struggles with certain things, and some families have healthier dynamics than others. A lot of religious families do not have, like fundamentalist religious families, do not have the healthiest boundaries. A lot of religious fundamentalist families engage in constant boundary crossing, inappropriate relationships, patterns of codependency. And so a lot of times what happens, and this is very common in Mormonism, is when people start to question or they deconstruct or they start to kind of shift their direction or they don't believe anymore, one of the first things I usually hear is like, what is my family going to think? My family's going to judge me. My family's never going to speak to me again. Like those kinds of things. And that highlights, I think, a larger issue. But it's also, for a lot of people, the like emotional management on our part to try to prevent our families from experiencing any kind of distress from our decisions. And that's something that you have to, like, that I help people work through often in therapy, is they have to cope with their own distress and what that means for them.
Yeah.
And yes, sure, was McKay's family and my family largely disappointed when we left the church? Absolutely. But it's not my job to manage their disappointment. And their disappointment and like whatever feelings they have are completely valid, and I get that. But it's not my job to manage it, and it's not my job to prevent me from doing the things that I want to do or living as my authentic self because they're not pleased with that. And so that is a large element of deconstruction as well, is what is the perception of me going to be and how am I going to deal with that? And that's a hard one.
Yeah. And I'm not going to say that it was a fun time necessarily.
No, absolutely not.
It was really rocky. When we left the church, it was like my dad recently had just been released from being bishop. My parents, they work in the temple every single week. They drive up and they do that, and they hold callings and stuff like that. But honestly, we have never had a better relationship with my parents than we have right now.
But it was rough in the beginning.
But
it was really rough.
It was not a fun time.
And, so I've apologized to Bethany. Said, I'm sorry for selling you a picture of myself that's not been true, and making it seem like I believe a certain thing or am a certain way in order to make you feel better, when I'm really not.
That is an example of emotional management. This is often a codependent strategy that people learn in childhood, is that I have to manage other people's emotions for my own safety, which means that I'm going to run my reactions through a filter of how it's going to impact other people. And if it's going to impact people negatively, then I'm going to shift it, or I'm not going to do it, or I'm going to engage in something else. And so this is often a pattern that we learn as children for safety purposes, not always, but often. And so I could easily see that being at play here. And lots of people who leave religions have trauma that they've experienced that also plays a role in the deconstruction process.
How's it been for you?
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. That is a lot to share. Does that feel okay to share? Do you feel okay?
Yeah, I feel like I just kind of rammed through it.
Yeah.
Important thing I just want to highlight as a couples therapist, Bethany immediately validated everything that he was saying just now and thanked him, expressed appreciation, fondness, and admiration immediately. This is exactly how I would coach someone in therapy to respond to something like that. And has it always been this way? Maybe not, because maybe the first time he brought this up, she was having some big emotions, and maybe it didn't go this way the first few times. But for most people, it doesn't. So the fact that she was able to respond this way just now, and I know that they're doing this on camera, but it comes off as genuine.
They could have cut something out.
It does come off as genuine to me. So I really appreciate that from a couples therapist perspective, like that was well done.
That's like a big deal. So
it's a huge deal. Yeah.
Acknowledge that. It's a big deal to acknowledge it. And
have they gone to therapy? I'm starting to wonder.
I mean,
if they haven't, they're doing something right. So keep doing it.
Either that or whatever pastor they have coming over is extraordinarily
really
trained.
Good at what he does. And the physical affection.
I would say
reassuring.
It's not something that I would have I don't think when we got married, I would have thought you were going in this direction for sure. But I think maybe like a year or so into our marriage, just your interests and books and what you like to study and stuff, it was like, okay, I think that it was, I could start to see that coming in.
a lot of people who are deconstructing, who are in the process and don't necessarily want to like dive into it fully or don't want to bring it up to their spouse right away, will often engage in a lot of like self-help. Like they'll do, you know, maybe they start therapy, or they'll do some, like they're reading a lot of like psychology books down the self-help path, because it feels like taking ownership of that in a way that is going to be palatable for my partner.
Yeah.
I mean, we've had conversations about this sort of stuff. I've not been like totally in the dark for a while now, I would say. So I think that that's definitely been, I wouldn't say you've been like totally dishonest recently, maybe just when we got married.
Maybe at the very beginning.
Got the girl. Surprise.
Well, it wasn't like the next day I was like, surprise, I'm an atheist. You just did it with an atheist.
Oh, my.
I mean, yeah, people have a lot of questions about that. Like what I think, what you think, how that works in our relationship. I think that we are uniquely gifted to love each other and work through a relationship like this. I think that even though it's hard for me, it does not, I am not like, I don't know. I have so much love for you, and it is emotional.
I feel like I'm in session right now. This is like tripping me out a little bit. Like I feel like I'm working with a couple right now, and
do send them a bill?
I'm like actively like trying to like focus on what we're doing, because this is very intimate. This is very raw. This is very vulnerable, very emotional that they're talking about this.
Well, and it's such a good sign to see that she's like, well, it's difficult for me, but I love you. And I feel like that's kind of a sign that maybe their relationship was built upon this foundation of belief or religion or what have you. But it sounds like there are other aspects, or maybe even the entire thing, that was completely independent of that is able to keep things going while they're in kind of this tumultuous time. Because I like to think that Jordan and we had a really strong connection that was independent of Mormonism. Like we had a strong connection because of Mormonism. I mean, we would just go in, like sit in Temple Square and hang out there and be together in that capacity. Yeah. But we would also, I mean, I feel like that really contributed in a big way to us being able to stay together. Yeah. Even though we left at the same time. Yeah. But just because you both leave at the same time doesn't mean that necessarily you're going to be able to stay in that relationship, or that's going to be what you continue to want.
Sure. I feel like I shouldn't be here.
I know, right?
A lot of people have wondered and have asked, like in the questions and stuff, how that is. And I am emotional, so we're just going to roll with it. Or else we'll never finish. I think that, like, when I think back to, I think this is something that, like, I really believe, like, when I think back to when we got married, I still look back and it's like, I have so much confidence that we're supposed to be together. And I have so much confidence that we are, like, super uniquely gifted to, like, really love each other. And I think we have a, like, I think that we, and people have told us, like, you know, that we sought counsel from and stuff, just have been so encouraging and supportive of how we've been able to, like, press toward each other and love each other and have these conversations and not just, like, run away from each other in fear or, like, separate, but we've been able to, like, grow. And even though it's hard, this big difference of ours now, like, I think we love each other more now than we did, you know, 3 weeks ago, a year ago, when we got married, obviously. Yeah.
I have a lot of empathy for Bethany in this position. And again, lots of people have lots of opinions on Bethany, and we have criticized her for doing stupid things in the past. And that's completely fair and valid. And
criticized for the harm that
her viewpoints,
Girl Defined, has caused.
Correct, right? So we're going to practice some cognitive psychological flexibility here, which is thinking about people that in more than one dimension, and we can hold two things at the same time to be true. Right? Like we can,
absolutely,
two things can be true at the same time, even if they feel like they're very conflicting. So I can completely disagree and be a person who speaks vocally about the harm that Bethany and Girl Defined have exhibited towards like the LGBTQ community and things of that nature. But at the same time, I'm also going to hold a lot of respect and empathy for Bethany in this position, because it is hard to be a part of something that was taught to you. Because remember, Bethany's not a convert. She was raised in this. Bethany was raised in this, and it is a fundamental part of who she is, which is valid. But it is a very, like, scary place to be in when the person that you love the most and depend on a lot and care about deeply looks at the thing that is fundamentally a part of who you are in your life, is built on it, and saying, I don't believe that anymore. Like, that is a very hard place to be for anybody of any belief system. And so I have a lot of empathy here for her. Her feelings in this regard are completely valid, and she can simultaneously feel the way that she feels and still support Dave at the same time, because there are going to be people inevitably that come in here, and I'm going to kind of defend her a bit here. Her feelings about this are valid, whatever they are. Like, it does not matter if she's in a different place or if she disagrees. Like, she can still support Dave and have the feelings that she has, and they can be valid.
Yeah.
It is our own management of what we want in our relationships and how we're going to handle that distress personally without projecting it onto our partner or making it our partner's problem. But her feelings, exactly as they are valid. And she gets to, if she chooses to, in some, and I work on this with people all the time, in some element, you get to grieve that your partner does not believe that anymore. Or you get to grieve the fact that, you know, this image that you might have had growing up, and even still, you get to grieve that it's not the thing that you thought it would be. And that's fair. And it doesn't mean anything badly about your relationship, but you get to process that however you need to, as long as you're not inflicting harm upon your partner.
Yeah. I think ultimately, based on the state that that Bethany is emotionally and everything like that, I think that the only thing that could come of this is constructive.
Yep.
Which is, you know, good considering all the criticizing we've done of Bethany in the past.
Absolutely.
Like, my heart is filled with so much love for you, you know, and I want to be the woman with you. Like, I don't want to be anywhere else, you know, like, I don't want a different man. Like, I want to be with you in this journey, even though it is hard. I want to be with you. But it is hard. It's hard to think, like, I mean, we are going to church together right now. Mm-hmm. And, well, you know, you are leading our family in, like, a morning devotional.
Yeah.
And, you know, you're just more careful with the words. Like, you say, like, this is what the Bible says, this is what the Bible teaches.
Yeah, I can tell Davey, because I'm thrilled if Davey's, you know, learning about the Bible and all that. It's like, it's great, you know? Yeah, but I'll say things like, you know, the Bible teaches that God loves us or something like that, rather than like, oh, God loves us.
I mean, it's really sweet. I think that
this is exactly how I have couples approach this. Oftentimes, not always, but oftentimes in couples
respectable
therapy, is how do we navigate beliefs? Like, I'm okay. Like, oftentimes what I'll do with couples is it comes down to values. So I'll have couples do a values inventory where they identify, not in a religious context, but what are the values that each of them have individually. And then I have them come back together and we analyze them and we look them over and we see what they have in common. Because a lot of times we label things as religion, but it's really a value that both people hold that can be viewed in like a non-religious or even a secular context. Like, it's not being Christ-like, it's just being kind and compassionate. And so if we both hold that value and just view it in terms of different ways, it's like, okay, I can teach my son to be kind to others, and it doesn't have to be contingent upon that's what Christ does. That's a kind thing to do, and we want our children to grow up to be kind and compassionate people. And so this is a wonderful example of, like, obviously you have to have conversations around, like, what you want for your children, and they've probably had those conversations privately. But being able to say, like, the religious text does say this, and that's what the religious text says. Not that I believe that.
Yeah.
But that's what the religious text says, and I can agree that that is, like, maybe from an objective perspective, a good thing to be taught, you know? And so I appreciate that he's able to do it in a way that is still respectful of where he feels he's at right now, but is also respectful of Bethany and her beliefs. And some couples struggle with this. This is a very, very challenging thing to do, is to navigate what does the religious belief look like for our kids because of my partner. So this is a very, like, dicey waters to navigate. So I really respect them for kind of working through this.
It reminds me of Alan Mount, one of the co-hosts of Marriage on a Tightrope. He is very staunch atheist, but he attends church with his wife, the Mormon church, every single Sunday, goes with his family, sits with them, is definitely not quiet about what he thinks when asked, but he shows a lot of respect.
Marriage on a Tightrope is a really good resource
for me to live like that, but he's really respectable.
That's the thing when you hear about, like, oh, where, like, one couple deconstructs and the other doesn't. At least even having talked to friends and stuff, there can be a lot of, like, I don't know, like, even just that sort of stuff, like talking about the Bible or talking about Jesus or church can become, like, super high tension. But I've appreciated just, like, your maturity in that way of not being like, well, I'm not doing that, or don't teach the kids about that. You've been just, like, very, at least now, like, seeing the value in the community of that. And just the value of at least our kids being there for now. And I think that, like, Davey has such a genuine interest in, like, God and in the Bible. And I just really appreciate how you are willing to, like, I don't know, feed that interest or whatever. I don't know how you want to say it.
He might bring it up, when, or he does. He brings it up every so often. It's fun, It's great to hear him.
I have an off-topic comment real quick. Dave is still in his undercut era. I think it's time to grow the mane, my man.
You were in your undercut era when we left.
I know. That's why I say that. It's time to grow the mane out.
And learning stuff, and yeah.
Yeah, so I think that it's more like, when I think about it, I guess it's more those fears of, like, what exactly does the future look like for us and for this? Because at this point, like, we both see ourselves, like, not, you see yourself more deconstructing and I see myself not. Like, in the sense of, like, I see myself, like, I just, I don't know. I like being a Christian. I like that trust in the Lord and stuff.
I guess maybe it'll be a competition of who can love the other person the best, and thereby making the best apologetic, the best argument for their view.
It's really sweet, though, because I do have friends who, like, are in my position of, like, their husband's starting to deconstruct or whatever, and just, like, I just feel like you've been and continue to strive to just, like, love me so well and be so kind and sensitive and patient, and I am hoping to do the same toward you.
Getting up in the morning and being like, oh,
I feel like just over the past several seconds that people kind of think that once you've deconstructed, or you're like a godless atheist like me, that we kind of expect the whole world to also kind of follow suit.
Oh, yeah.
And that we don't want you to be Christian or anything like that. But essentially where we want people to be is where Bethany is right now, where she's like, I like believing in God. I like being a follower of Jesus. And I also love you, and I respect what you have to say. We want people to just be able to respect other people's viewpoints.
Exactly.
And I know that I am very critical, and sometimes it probably comes across that I would never accept anybody like that, but it just boils down to respecting other people's lifestyles and viewpoints.
Absolutely.
And then because a lot of right-wing Christians, they're not there.
No.
They want the world view to be their worldview, and that should be the general consensus.
And every other viewpoint is wrong.
Yeah, and we're a Christian nation. We should all be abiding by the Bible, when, a lot of us we don't buy into that.
And yeah, I think this is a good, like, it has pushed back on, like, this is why deconstruction for a lot of couples can be the demise of a relationship, because lots of people believe these things so rigidly that they just,
they can't respect it.
They can't. And it's, you know, I'm never going to shame anybody who makes that decision, because it's about you and your values. And if that's truly an implication for you that you can't get around, then that's valid. But I see here, like, the separation of the relationship from the religion is important. And to look at that here and go, no, we love each other and I feel like we're supposed to be together, and having religion be an element of the picture and not the entire picture, I think can change how you view things.
Yeah.
I find a heightened level of like, well, then everything that happens is it's like my responsibility. Like if I don't like something, it's like, it's on me. It's not, I can't blame God for anything, it's just, and I can't like spiritualize things like, oh, maybe God wants this hard thing to be happening to me in order to teach me something and stuff. It's like, if you don't believe in that and then it's just like, oh, I feel crappy because I feel crappy and whatever. I don't know. Maybe there's a reason. Maybe there's not. Maybe I need to eat something. Maybe whatever. Maybe I need.
When you have that paradigm shift, it is so hard. It's like getting thrown into the deep end of the pool.
He's describing it very funny, but it's a very deep.
Oh yeah, when you decide that you don't believe in God or in any anymore, you don't believe in any afterlife, and then somebody close to you dies, it'll throw you
things for you
through a loop.
Confront myself about an issue that I have, and I'm not living with my integrity or something, and I still very much hold to that. The integrity stuff hasn't gone away. I would say this is a step in the direction of more integrity, more honesty, even more strength in a lot of ways, I would say. And I've been like, well, we can get into some of the comments and stuff in the video, but there was a couple of comments in particular that really landed with me, and that I've been taking as fuel to be able to grow and to do a lot better.
That makes
Stanley
me so
girly!
happy. Not the Stanley thing. I'm
okay.
happy about the comments on the video, because first of all, none of us are entitled to any information about Dave's journey. Deconstructing faith, whether he goes back to church,
whatever
whether
he wants to share is up to him.
Like, we are not entitled to any of that information. But the Fundy Snark community can be toxic. Y'all, we can be toxic. We all have our moments. We all have our moments where things get too heated. We have lots of valid emotions, and maybe that extends into leaving some really harsh or inappropriate comments, or, we've seen horrible things said.
If you're a true Fundy snarker, that's very ill-advised.
It's very ill-advised, and we're not anybody who wishes any ill will on Dave or Bethany or anybody in the Fundy Snark community. Like, that's not, when Paul and Morgan are talking about how people were like wishing death upon their child and things, like, you guys, there's a line.
That's
and
weird.
You need to mind it. That is like, you have got some big feelings coming up, and that's fine. But wishing those kinds of things on people is not okay. It's not okay.
More on people's children who have nothing to do with whatever their parents are saying. Mind
that, process that on your own instead of pushing that back out. So that, just first and foremost, like, the community, and I think it tends to have the backfire effect, because lots of us want fundies to be in a healthier position where they're not inflicting harm onto others, right? Of course. But we also just want them to be their authentic selves and be happy and not impacting anybody in a very harmful way, like the LGBTQ community. But I think it tends to have the backfire effect sometimes, because then people view the entire Fundy Snark community as like, oh, these are all just haters. And our message and like what we're trying to do gets minimized when those people just view us as haters. And they do. Like, I'm sure many of them do. And that's fine. That's fine. I'm not going to be personally offended by that. But I think the Fundy Snark community has the opportunity to be a force for good in some of these cases. And I hope that some of the comments that came of this were coming from like the maybe non-religious or maybe more nuanced Christian perspective that's supportive of him and Bethany. Because we can absolutely be against Bethany's homophobic and transphobic views, but also respect her for being in the
And
position that she's
maybe
in.
some of that is more a projection on the brand from Kristen.
Totally. Because
I
that is
feel
an
like
aspect
Kristen
here.
was more the one that I remember seeing more specifically stuff. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong.
Kristen's
We've
more
seen a
intense
lot,
about it. Bethany,
but-
I think, again, I mean, video for another day. But I think it's going to be our ability to hold both of these truths at the same time. That Bethany has some homophobic, transphobic, and unhelpful, harmful views and has made that part of her career and platform and shares that with others. But she's also doing something here. And there's something to be said for, I'm not pushing for Bethany to deconstruct, but a lot of times when partners deconstruct, like when one partner does, oftentimes they deconstruct some things together.
Yeah.
Not that Bethany will ever leave her religion, but sometimes they look at some aspects within their religion and they're like, you know what, like that's a good point. I don't really think that that's great either. And I think that could potentially be what's happening with the sex part of this. And this is my theory on the sex thing. Because everybody was like, wow, Bethany's really pivoting into this like sexy wife whole ordeal. And yes, she shares a lot of things that maybe I don't need to know. But when your partner is deconstructing, a lot of times there are efforts to try to reach them where they are and try to understand where they're coming from in some senses because it can bring you closer. So if that aspect is an aspect that she can connect with him on, like, hey, the Christian church maybe doesn't do a great job of helping men and women with sex once they're married, that's absolutely a thing that she can probably connect with him on that maybe other Christians don't agree with.
Yeah.
And so I would 100% see that as like, I can go like full throttle into this because this is maybe a more progressive opinion that both of us hold. And that makes us more connected to each other. So that's my theory on that. And that I might even be operating on a subconscious level there, but that's what I see kind of.
But
from a distant perspective.
I honestly, I see that too, because maybe some of those tough conversations that they have had in the past were related to purity culture and the harmful ways that Girl Defined had contributed to that. Mm-hmm. So I could totally see something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, just from like wrapping this up, because I know a lot of people are asking questions about this part, like this, like people are asking like, what more are the differences? So he uses language and you don't. It's like,
the cussing should probably be the least of your worries at this point.
I was going to
it's
say,
more
y'all,
of like our difference in our faith journey, our belief in Christ and the Word, and like all of that. And yeah, like it's tough. Like I'm not going to pretend like I'm some superwoman and just like, oh, it's like, it's hard. And it's just like it is a lot, but I want to, I think I was telling you today, like we have so many things that we, like, even just when I think back to like, I don't know, dating or whatever, it's like just like the stuff we love to do together, the unique relationship we have. I mean, that's one of the reasons, like from the beginning when we started dating, I was like, I want to do YouTube with you because I just, and it's going to sound so selfish, but it's like, I love our relationship. And I think we're like a super special couple.
That's why we do this. No, I'm just kidding.
it is interesting. It does lend itself to, she's more of the like, she has more investment in Girl Defined maybe than Kristen does. That's what that lends itself to me to believe, that she's much more on like, this is what I want to do maybe than Kristen.
I think we have like a willingness to be real and open and like not putting on a show and just like,
that is very much
really
evidenced here.
Like a fun relationship. And I just think that not in like a teaching sense, but just like in a sharing our life sense, that's something that I just have really loved about us. And so it's like, yeah, would it be awesome if we both just like shared the same faith like super strongly and just were like both felt so encouraged by that with each other? Of course, I think we'd both love that, whatever that.
Yeah, being on the same page, that'd be.
If I were like, yes, deconstruction, babe. I don't know.
I mean,
Let's go!
Okay.
We also
Let's go!
I like to see that Bethany is a drink girly because she's got the water and the soda.
We do love that.
That's totally Jordan right there.
And if
I'll just have to make deconstruction look absolutely attractive, just like the most loving husband.
So yeah,
Fair.
I mean, I would say that, in a year, I'm sure we'll have a lot more to say.
Oh man, can you imagine what happened in a week?
Yeah.
What is
It's
going to
like-
happen in a year?
I mean, it's like, I love our kids. I love you.
Yeah.
I love
Kids
the
are
life we're building together.
Yeah.
I have so much excitement for just the family that we've been given, potentially in the future, more, it's like, just like the adventures, like we've have so many dreams of like places we want to travel, things we want to do together, just like the kind of kids we want to raise, just all
like
of
going
that.
to Costa Rica, maybe.
It's just so special.
I feel like one of the big hurdles that people get into or they face when they're in a mixed faith marriage is getting past the idea that this is like everything that they are.
Yeah.
Like, if that isn't there, then what do we have?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because, I mean, it's kind of by design, because they want it to be everything to you so that it continues to be a part of what you're doing and everything like that. But I remember having conversations like this when we left our church, and it was like, people were like, well, what are we going to talk about? And look at us now. We have so much to talk about all the time. I'm willing to dip into the religion thing. I'm not going to sugarcoat what I'm going to believe. Or you can talk to me about it. I don't care. But
it's that black or white thinking that pops up.
Bethany just listed off, I love you. I love our kids. I love our life we're building. I love that we're doing this, and that.
The future plans they have together.
There's so much that we are, even when we kind of build that foundation, that we kind of, get caught up in thinking, this is my foundation, and without it, I won't be able to have anything else.
Yeah, and that's a scary thought.
So yeah,
there's a whole house on top of that foundation.
Absolutely.
I think you have to look at your life and anyone at any time. I mean, there are people who have a lot more in common than the two of us and who are way more miserable, It's like we don't have that in common right now, but the way that I don't know, it's just like your focus and where you're going and what you're doing. And at least that's what I choose to do.
Okay, I want to say, Bethany, by far, the highlight of the highlights of 24 Hours with Bethany was Bethany.
No.
Paul and Morgan were great, of course, and but Bethany was, you were stunning, and just the kindness.
All right,
damn,
get it home,
you showed, and the just your understanding heart. And
but I come back to the thought that this is not the same couple that we've seen.
100%.
I swear.
Yeah, even on
I
the
don't
Barbie
know.
video.
Maybe we've just been cherry picking and seeing the worst of the worst, but yeah, even since the Barbie.
And that was not long ago.
Your ability to handle all of the differences that we have and still speak in such a, just a lovely way about me and about our relationship. It was really beautiful. Mm-hmm. I'm so grateful for Bethany and her. She's really blown me away with just her kindness and her open heart. And
I love you so much.
You're a hell of a woman,
babe.
What a woman. I don't know. I hope that people aren't out there like, oh, this is just clinging to what's left of their relationship or something like that. I don't think that's the case. I honestly do think that.
Do they have a hard path?
Would be such a hard thing to really fake in this.
Yeah, I don't think they're faking it. I don't think
believable manner.
They would have the energy to fake it, honestly.
They are not that great of actors.
No, I don't believe that at all.
She likes it a little bit. Yeah. No, I should. A little bit.
I feel like I shouldn't be here.
Here's the deal. It's like, this is my man, like, if you're gonna, I'm not.
POV, you're on a double date with that couple that just cannot get enough of each other.
Yeah.
I'm just not one of those wives where I'm gonna be like, I don't use language. Every time you use language, I'm gonna give you the cold shoulder to show you not. It's like, You're my
Good.
I love
It's too
you.
much fun for that.
I'm gonna,
We know people like that.
Unfortunately, there again, we come back to a lot of the black and white rigidity, extremism that exists in religion, and that doesn't lend itself to navigating these situations very well. It's a lot harder.
It's like, I'm just gonna accept you just like you do for me. I do things that you don't like, and you accept me, and just like, so it's like you can either give the cold shoulder or laugh along and
Come on.
fall more in love.
Where's the
It's
noogie?
like, fall
Okay.
more in love.
Here, yeah. So here's the.
Oh my heavens!
Oh,
Again,
All right. Settle down, Tiger. We love it. We love people loving each other.
I 100% think that there is kind of a weight that gets lifted off a partner when they feel like they can authentically show up exactly as who they are. Even if the only change was I can just speak it into existence out loud. I can share it with other people and I don't have to filter myself through these lenses that I don't feel like apply to me anymore. I mean, that is liberating. That can completely change the dynamic of a relationship.
Yeah.
And that he feels safe to do it with her. She
Yeah.
has provided enough emotional safety for him to do so.
Yeah, even if the conversations were really hard or they didn't go the way that either of them were hoping for a while, it seems like they've at least reached a place of reconciliation or
absolutely. And the whole idea,
mutual understanding.
You know, I know there's like her career is wrapped up in religion and things. And so if you think about it, you know, when we think about people leaving faith and deconstructing and things, Bethany, I think, has a lot more on the line if she were to deconstruct than your average person. But I mean, again, I'm not trying to give anybody ideas here.
Here's a good replacement.
But I think if she still wanted to do content and she started deconstructing, I think she would, and she started, you know, and she was accountable for the beliefs that she's held and some of the harm that she's done, which we all kind of have to reckon with when we deconstruct and we don't believe those things anymore. We have to sit with, oh man, we were homophobic. Or like, as a bisexual person, I had internalized homophobia. Or like, you have to kind of sit with those things and take accountability where it's needed. But she would still have a platform. And it would be a hell of a platform.
She'd have a whole new audience.
They would do phenomenally well if they approached it the right way.
Yeah.
it bumped a tiny little hair in my nose.
Oh my heavens.
So sorry.
Oh my god.
Okay, you want to talk about comments?
Yeah, let's talk about.
Let's get on with it.
Oh my gosh, did I really?
I think you broke my face. Yeah, let's talk about comments. Okay, the comments. We have been known to sit in our bed and scroll comments and
No.
That's
Okay.
just for one person.
This is
and
my
you don't do
personal
it.
opinion. Okay, this is my personal opinion, not my, and maybe there's some nuance to be had because I'm a therapist. I don't read the comments.
I do. I love it.
Because I, like you guys, we also have haters. We get death threats on occasion, not more so recently, but especially when we started. And we get lots of people that say lots of insulting things, like call us fat, call us ugly, like blah, 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 blah. For my mental health, for my sanity, and for my expenses when it comes to paying my therapist, I have determined that not reading comments is the best thing for me. I imagine, you know, we do this as a couple. And so occasionally we get comments about our relationship. Not very often. But I would imagine it would be a next level kind of thing happening to have people be analyzing your relationship and saying you're not going to stay together, you're going to get divorced, your marriage sucks, you should leave your husband because he's not faithful. Like, they're going to be getting it from both sides. They're going to be getting it from, like, the progressive people who have maybe left religion and deconstructed, and the, like, extreme devoted people who are like, she deserves to have somebody who is faithful and will raise her family in Christ and blah, blah, blah. My only encouragement, you decide what's best for you. If you can read comments and it doesn't bother you, then you're a hell of a lot stronger than me. But I would say this is uniquely taxing and can be very emotionally exhausting. And so just know where your boundaries are.
I'm a pig wallowing in filth in the comments.
God,
I live for it.
I can't.
Live for it.
laugh our heads off because some of this stuff is so funny.
Okay, if you have a sense of humor about it, that's
they
better.
just Well, okay, I've loved all the comments, like people just like feeling like they saw a new side of us, gaining
Yeah,
a new, of course,
a lot
like
of just nice, genuine
all the
comments.
nice, genuine comments, really love those. But I just think it's hilarious how almost every single person in the comments like picks someone they want to side with. That's just so funny to me. Like, I like this person, I like that, but I don't like that. It's just like everyone's got their person.
I know one of my favorite comments on me is, Dave is a sociopath.
Shut up, you guys! What did I just say at the beginning of this?
Gotta vilify the people.
That is not appropriate,
They
you
don't-
guys.
Sociopath isn't even the...
That better not be from a Funny Snark community. That is not, as a therapist especially, that is not
no
appropriate
way,
to say
no
to
way.
anyone.
That has to be...
Oh my god.
I'm sorry to generalize, but that has to be
That better not be a Funny Snark person.
a Paul and Morgie kind of person.
I cannot.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. So
This is why people don't want to leave.
when it comes to the comments, the places that I've looked at comments are the Instagram Reels, like that Paul and Morgan post and that we've collabed on. There's like a lot of comments on those, like snippets from the video.
Yeah.
And then obviously like the main Paul and Morgan 24 Hours With, that has a lot of comments. And then they did a reaction video to their own video.
To their video.
And that was fun to watch.
Damn, they really are milking this, aren't
They
they?
are milking... They must have got good views on that shit.
And they have the comments on there.
Why'd they do a reaction video? Just do like a behind the scenes or something. If
Yeah.
they're taking that much...
Sheesh.
And the
whatever.
only other video I've watched about this video, thanks to your recommendation, is the Zelf on the Shelf video with
Shout out to
Shout out to
Zelf.
Sam and
Sam and Tanner.
Tanner.
Samantha.
Does he know
He watches Zelf.
Zelf?
This is
I
the
had-
biggest
Tanner.
shout out to
Shout
Zelf,
out
you
to
guys.
Samantha and Tanner of Zelf on the Shelf. They're two beautiful people, and the world is better for them.
I had never heard of them. I don't watch like anything on YouTube, like any videos about me, about Girl Define. Like people might be like, that's the main critic
Probably wouldn't encourage it.
of Girl Define. And it's like, I have never heard of them because I literally do not spend any time on Reddit, any time on YouTube. Like,
You're not saying Zelf on the Shelf is the main critic. Is this
No. I'm just saying, like, I don't know a lot about it. So Zelf on the
Right.
Shelf has made videos about Girl Defined. I had never heard of them.
And this
They
is
have.
true because I think some people do think.
Yeah, they did it with Nuance Ho, Kara.
Way back when.
Girl
Yep.
Reclined.
Yep.
You watch reaction videos and stuff like that, or you're scrolling Reddit or something, and it's not that way.
I
Bethany-
don't.
Yeah, she does not watch this stuff.
For her mental
And I
health,
don't
it's
watch.
probably the best.
I
Yeah, you
would
don't
watch
either.
hardly any of it. It's just that I happened to be.
How'd you come across the Zelf on the Shelf video?
It was because
It was
I
only
was
like a few
preparing-
days ago. You found
It was
them.
like a week or
A
two
week ago? Okay, yeah, it
was
wasn't that long ago.
So because we were going to meet with our pastor, and I was thinking, okay, what are the things that I want to bring up? And so I was kind of Googling like Girl Defined videos. So I was listening to like Girl Defined videos, and then some of the reaction stuff, and I stumbled upon Zelf on the Shelf. It was like
so funny.
the top. It was the top something, and it was the hooks because it was like.
Was it one with you?
Yeah,
It was seeing your face.
it was like the Barbie review and the our conversation stuff, and
You were like, that's
so,
me.
like that's
me.
and then I started listening to it, and I kind of got hooked on Zelf on the Shelf
Because you were like, these people worship the ground I walk on.
no,
Yes, they
it doesn't. I like them.
I do too. I get
I
it.
think they're super nice, and I feel a lot of affirmation from them, and that's very sweet. But no, and.
If
That's
you-
what he needs right now. Like,
Yeah.
shout out. We
Yeah.
love that. He's going to largely hear that from most people
He
in
would
this space.
love to know the origin of Zelf.
Oh, God.
Dave, if you ever see this, just Google Zelf.
Maybe
Was
Zelf's
he a
done a video
Nephite or a
on it.
Lamanite? I don't know.
I don't remember.
Find you would find this hilarious.
And I like these people. Okay.
So he was like, oh, you know, like they seem cool. You would probably like them, whatever. So this is just a side tangent. So then I was like, okay, I don't watch like any. That's like Paul and Morgan's reaction was the only thing I was planning on watching. I don't Google, I don't YouTube, I don't look at anything. But that specific one, I like went straight to the channel and I was like, okay, I'll watch it. And I definitely appreciate their like kind, gracious way they went about like discussing it and stuff. They call themselves like Exmormons, or they are Exmormons, or anyway. So I think they're a good representation
Shout out.
of like unpacking a video
love
in a
Exmormon
kind,
representation.
gracious way. At least that one. At least that video of theirs.
Okay, because you went to watch some of the other ones. Okay. In that vein, I don't think we talked about it in here, but hater levels.
Oh, yeah.
Critic. Okay, just dream with me for a little bit.
Okay.
We can often talk past
We're on board.
each other because when we talk about how to deal with like in our dinner table conversation in the 24 hours of the video, we talked about the haters or critics and people, and when one person's thinking about haters, they're thinking about the people trying to actively remove you from social media and get you banned and coming after you and giving you death threats and all kinds of terrible things. And then somebody else might be thinking, oh, somebody who has a different point of view who is pointing out that they think your view is harmful and stuff like that. So
Wonderfully said. Wonderfully said.
I always say I'm like the biggest hater, and that's the brand of hater that I like to bring to the table.
Because here's the thing, like we criticize, we criticize Bethany for her viewpoints mainly on, LGBTQ things specifically, right? And like things of that nature. That is my biggest beef with Bethany, I would have to say personally. But we are not a person who's like, Bethany deserves to not exist on the planet, or Bethany is like we make fun of Bethany and because I think partially she's a weirdo like we are, and so it's easy for her to do stupid things and we make fun of it. But because I think she does give her own brand of theater kid energy in a way. But I think the perfect difference here is highlighted in like I'm critiquing based on viewpoints that I disagree with, and not like I just fundamentally dislike Bethany and think she doesn't deserve to have a platform. Like I don't want her platform to consist of hate towards a marginalized group of people. Yeah. But it's not, I don't want her to exist in YouTube altogether.
We're not saying that part of it hasn't existed and stuff.
Oh, for sure, because we all have moments where we go too far or we make comments that we regret, and in the heat of the moment things get spicy. Like I wasn't thrilled with her and Kristen's take on the Shiny Happy People documentary either. That was frustrating to me, as a survivor of abuse.
Yo, you're moving the camera, dude.
Stop.
God. Yeah, like the kind of the bitch eating crackers.
The bitch eating crackers. I think a lot of people in Fundy Snark have a BEC with Bethany.
I remember specifically Jordan sent me a post where Bethany seemed to be having trouble cutting onions or something, or peeling the onions. And I was like,
this feels like bitch eating crackers.
Oh yeah. I was like, this is bitch eating crackers 100%.
And I had to sit with it for a second because I was like, wait a minute. You're right. And I think this is the trap that we have to, as critics of people, that we have to not fall into, is it's not everything they do. Because again, we only get what they portray on their YouTube channel, on social media. And Bethany does put a lot out there. So I think Bethany gives more content, and so there's more to choose from. Yeah. But that's like, I even had to mind my own shit of like, okay, this is just like me being annoyed for no reason versus like an actual opinion that I think is harmful.
I mean, stuff like that. That applied to me. I was like, she's doing it the same way that I do it.
It's you just have to be self-reflective, and maybe this comes from the deconstruction process. Maybe that's just being in this space. Like I'm sure there's been things that I've pointed out about Bethany that were in poor taste, but I think that's just part of this process, is reminding like why we do it. And yes, you open yourself up to criticism anytime you put things online, and that applies across the board to anybody. But like being mindful of why we're doing it and what we're basing it on, instead of just being like, bitchy or not girls about it,
Maybe hater is the premium package, where it's like the platinum, we have a wonderful platinum package to offer you, and the platinum package is full on hater of that nature, and then level 1 is the bronze package, which is like or silver, which is I don't know, just like somebody who disagrees with views, thinks your views are harmful, something like that.
That would be Zelf on the shelf. They would.
So we're like bronze haters.
They definitely disagree.
We have a different. We actually have a.
Oh, 100%. Bethany's not gonna like Zelf is progressive, but both of them are.
Difference of opinion. Yeah. Well, that's they think that your views are meaningful. Right.
Yeah, so they would be level 1, which would be more of like a critic. not
Yes.
a hater. I wouldn't put them in the hater camp at all.
Right.
I like to be called a hater, though.
No.
Even though I know haters get a bad rap, but I just like the word hater
You're too
more.
compassionate to be a hater.
I
Sorry.
know.
They're not a hater.
Yeah.
I think it's pronounced friend, but
It does.
she's like, yeah, you're not an unbiased.
Yeah, but like, they would be in that level one of like being critic and thinking some views are like, oh, these are hateful, damaging to the world, while also plummeting the depths. They plummet the depths of the Reddits and sometimes repeat things that are completely false and untrue. And so it's like
Reddit adjacent.
Yeah.
Like the whole conversion therapy thing. If that comes up one more time,
Oh, about Dave?
yes, I swear to
Or
God,
people speculating
I'm gonna
that
throw
he's gay.
hands with you guys in the comments. I
Yeah.
swear to God.
Which is just, that part is unfortunate to me. It's like, oh, like a channel like that, I do think they have so much going for them. And it's a little unfortunate to me when it's like, okay, why are you repeating some of these major talking points that are so completely false without like for sure knowing? So it's like, I really appreciate when channels on that level who are critics, it's easier to listen and to really accept like that feedback when they don't like repeat the random talking points, which not in the most recent video, but in some
We
previous
both watched
ones.
the most recent video today together.
Yeah, I mean, people always ask like, do you have any friends who are not just like you?
I'm sorry.
Okay, this is so funny to me because McKay has a hater voice that he reads hater comments in, and it depends on who it sounds like is writing the comment. But we often do this with hater comments like that too, so that's solid.
Oh, I love the hater voice.
What did he say?
People are always like, do you have any friends who aren't just like you? And here's the reality though, like we are super open to like having friends who think differently. For heck, I married you and
For
you're
heck. You heard it
For
here,
heck.
folks.
it's like I
sake,
married you and I
heck's
still
sake.
love you and we
Yeah.
have a
Darn.
blast
And
together.
she's not an idiot. Like Bethany knew from the beginning that I was kind of not cookie cutter.
No, you weren't. That's what attracted me to you for sure.
I was
It's
like,
just
hey,
like,
babe, I can welcome you to the dark side. Come be with me, babe.
I didn't think you were going that.
Like I shouldn't be here for this.
Is this going to get us in trouble?
Oh my God.
Is this
I'm dying.
is this YouTube friendly?
I'm
on
here
a
for this.
deconstruction route. But I mean, I really admired your integrity, which was
Yeah.
one of the things that I've talked over and over again is what I've loved most about you.
Yeah.
And it's your integrity that is taking you down
Which
this
is
path of
random.
deconstruction.
It's
So
kind
it's
of
like,
an irony.
yeah, but I still, I choose you today, babe.
I did get some positive comments on the 24 hours with the video for me personally, and Bethany got a lot of positive comments and just our relationship, and you have just a range. But I think Bethany is just the shining
The CVO?
the shining star video. One of the things that came up in the comments was there's a comment that had to do with my behavior and just making the observation that I seem to be taking little subtle digs at Bethany and kind of at her expense and sort of like siding with the outsiders and this reminding this person of this narcissistic behavior that she saw in her father or something.
Seriously. Projection.
Yeah. Projection much?
Why are we trauma dumping in the comments? If Dave reminds you of your abusive father, I'm sorry you had to go through that, but don't watch then. And it's not his problem. Jesus Christ.
I'm like, yeah,
It was like a whole
your
big
father.
comment.
Just a big comment. It was a couple comments, I guess.
Don't read those.
And just hearing that, just like, wow, I've never seen someone who exhibited the traits of my father quite like Dave, that is narcissistic.
Oh my God. Sit down.
That's
Touch grass.
that's inappropriate.
God.
Kind of traits. He didn't say I was a narcissist, but
I mean, that's kind of what they were implying.
Hello.
Sounds like.
Okay. Mental health professional here. You can't tell that from somebody on a screen. You can't tell that. You can't possibly. And the incidence rate of people who are actual narcissists, like diagnosed narcissistic personality disorder, it's completely rare. They're out there, but it's rare. That word gets thrown around a lot. It's become like a pop psychology term. And so we have to be careful of how we use that. Do people have narcissistic traits? Yes. Are they narcissists? Maybe, maybe not. But this is not appropriate. Yeah. I watched that same damn video, and I'm a mental health professional that is trained and can diagnose these things, and I did not see anything like that. And nor should you. Jesus.
You could, but you wouldn't because they're not your client.
No, absolutely not.
I read that and thought about it, and I was like, well, I definitely have been like that in the sense of taking little digs or making fun of Bethany in subtle ways, at her expense, snarking and stuff. And I felt like when I looked inside myself, I see traits like that. These narcissistic traits of like, needing someone to be less than in order for me to feel better about myself. And those are just traits that I really don't like, and I really don't want those there. And over, it was this a week ago, we were with our friends, and I made some comment. I was just making some comments. I was just being flippant. I was being flippant about deconstruction. I was just, being flippant with Bethany and it just, sort of little things at her expense, little put downs and things at her expense. And man, that's just the worst. That's just the worst behavior. And anyway, and so this comment calls me out, and I see a lot of those traits at times. It's been something that I've been working on. However, I could still see some more recent. And so I'm taking that very seriously, and I've used that comment, I think for good, as almost like rocket fuel to real.
I'm not trying to dig at his assessment at all, because if he feels like that, it has a place, and that's fine. But I do caution, because I think people say that in terms of like, oh, he's giving nuance to like the haters argument, and they would interpret their conversation that they just had as like him siding with the haters. I think people are just going to think that because he disagrees with Bethany maybe on her perception of certain people. Like, she probably isn't going to love everything Zelf does because they have been critical of her. And so, like, I think sometimes it comes from this place of like, well, if you disagree, then you don't really support your wife. Or if you don't agree on the same exact thing 100% of the time, then you guys aren't supporting each other. And one, that's not a healthy view of a relationship, just like at baseline. But two, like put downs and taking sarcasm too far and those things, I see them in relationships. I see them in therapy, and we isolate them. We take them out. We play with them. If they're severe, like there's a difference between like occasionally a partner takes like a comment too far or like does sarcasm in a way that's hurtful and like intentionally saying things to put down your partner. There is a difference between those two things. Like there's a difference between a misplaced comment and maybe even a criticism that wasn't worded properly and contempt. Okay, those are two very different things. And I did not see, like, I watch for those things because obviously I'm a couples therapist. This is what I do. I did not see anything contemptuous in that video. And contemptuous are predictors of, relationship demise and satisfaction. And so I did not see anything contemptuous. But that is a conversation that you have to have with your partner of like, hey, I know that you think these things are kind of funny, but they are kind of hurtful. So your partner can own it, take accountability, apologize, repair it, and move forward. And so, take comments with a grain of salt sometimes, because that to me sounded like massive projection.
Yeah, well, and I hope that the comment was, I don't know, intent or whatever is irrelevant, but I hope that it's not an opportunity to be like, wow, look at this monster that Dave is becoming now that he's like
absolutely
openly deconstructing faith and things like
that.
Because
I can absolutely see that happening, and that probably will happen in the comments from some people, unfortunately.
It kind of motivate me when I read it. It doesn't feel very good, but it really helps me to confront myself and say, okay, this, to the degree that I exhibit this behavior, this has got to stop. This has got to stop. Stop. This has got to stop, and this will stop. And I wrote a bunch of commitments for myself of how I speak about Bethany, and I think there's a way to have opinions, and at the same time to not come with any type of energy that's snarking on her from me. And actually it even extends to other things. Like as I started to confront myself on the narcissistic traits, and I mean, people disagree. Well, it's not narcissism, but it's like, yeah, but I'm using it fairly loosely, and you just go with it. As I confront myself on this, I notice there are other benefits as well. Like, I don't have to put other people down as much. It's not just Bethany. It's like other guys, for example. And I just remember this quote. I heard this great quote. A strong man doesn't need a weak man in order to feel strong. It's like a strong person doesn't need a weak person in order to feel strong. That is just so good, because so often what I have done in my life out of insecurity is put other people down, and often through joking and snarking and things where it's like, well, I wasn't being mean, but it's like, yeah, but there's like an edge to it. And I've done that.
I'm not saying this is the case here, but this is just a therapist tidbit. When that stuff does come up, it usually comes from somewhere. And so a lot of times I'll see that with unhealthy sibling dynamics. Like if there was a scapegoat sibling, or if there was a sibling, like a lot of times I see this with like middle children who often didn't get like a lot of emotional attention from parents, or oftentimes this develops as kind of like a coping mechanism or a safety mechanism for making ourselves feel safe in these kinds of situations. And so I'm not saying that's the case here. I'm not projecting any trauma onto Dave, but I'm saying that sometimes these things are more deeply rooted. And so when they come up, we kind of have to examine like, oh, I do this thing, I do it for a reason. Where does it come from? And a lot of like some families are just kind of rough with each other too. And when you have a partner who didn't grow up with a family like that, sometimes there's an adjustment period that has to be had of like, okay, maybe these things are things that are too far, and maybe we don't need to be saying these things. And so again, this is just, he's completely fostered a culture within himself of self-reflection and introspection. And that's like, I hope, there's a balance with that. I always tell people there is a possibility that you take things too far. Like, don't analyze every single thing, because that'll drive yourself mad with like when you're picking up on all these possible things, because everybody has room for growth, but you also have to give yourself credit where credit is due and appreciate growth in things. And like, we're the same thing with comments. Like you've got to analyze comments with kind of an objective eye and learn when things are said out of like projection or something that's completely unrelated or just not made in like good faith or understanding, and those that are like, okay, I don't love this, but maybe there's a valid criticism here. Yeah. And so I think he has demonstrated that he's able to do that. And I hope that translates as like a good model for Bethany to continue to see, because it's really, really hard to look inward when religious beliefs are involved, because they become as one. And so when you question the religion, for a lot of people, it feels like you're questioning the self, because it's become a part of you. And so when people make comments about like, oh, Christians do this, a lot of people get personally offended when we're making a comment about a generalized group, because it feels like it's a part of who they are. And the more you can have a healthy relationship with yourself and with religion independently, it doesn't have to be all of you. And I think that is good for some people and troublesome and challenging for others.
Often not out of a place of friendship. I think there's a way to take digs at people where you're really like rooting for them and you really want them to do well, and you're just being friends and you're just like ribbing each other and stuff. And I think even in marriage you could, like there's a place for teasing and stuff like that. But I know the difference. And what I'm talking about is something that I don't want to do with Bethany, and I really don't want to do with anybody else. I don't want to speak about other people in that kind of put down sort of way that wants to put myself above them.
I would just love to see Bethany engage in this kind of deep, deep, deep introspection. And I'm not saying she's not. It's possible, because Dave is being very public facing with this. Yeah. That's his choice, right? Bethany could be doing this on a private level and we just don't know about it. Again, we don't know. But I would just love to see her engagement on this. But again, as a religious person, it's hard to do that, because then religious beliefs start to get wrapped up in that.
And so I'm making some big changes. And it feels good to confront myself. But that was probably my favorite, as probably for me it's like the worst comment to read and to see, but the one that I can probably use the most.
I never saw that comment, the narcissist one, and like you were like, it's there, and I went to look. I just like am blind to it. I cannot see that comment. You would tell me about different comments, I couldn't see it, but I appreciate the way that you are choosing to not do that. with me specifically.
I'd like
nice.
to not be
Not
that
do
way.
that.
Why you make every time I try to do something fun, you make it not that way.
It's giving The Office.
It is The Office.
It is, right?
Yeah, he's
Okay.
quoting Michael Scott.
You make it not that way.
Which is something.
Why are you the way that you are?
So much. Wait, what does it say? I hate so much about the things you choose to be.
Yes!
I will give a shout out to the Zelf on the Shelf. They have a lot of quotable lines that were funny that we've been quoting.
Oh,
Lots
I
of
feel this is
quotable
their
lines.
best. With the
This
videos
one.
I've seen, they are at their their funniest.
Yeah, it's funny.
They were like, yeah.
There was a lot of funny
I'm
stuff,
starting
yeah.
to think of like t-shirts and stuff. T-shirts and stuff.
Like, whoa, dangerous thoughts there, my guy.
Not even the nature of the Godhead, babe.
And they got new, if you're not subscribed or if you don't follow Zelf, they also just got new audio equipment. So go support them.
Shout out.
I read the Torah, bro.
And I'm just like, yes, hold me, Janet.
There are so many people who are like, please address Paul attacking Dave afterwards. Paul loves to act like the best Christian and as if he knows all, but there is no such thing as the best Christian. And Dave's journey seems to be going well. All this stuff. So hopefully this video clears a lot of that up because you are owning.
Yeah, it's going to disappoint some people. Yeah, I mean, I think Paul is just expressing his view.
My favorite, and I tell this to clients all the time, true freedom in life, giving people permission to misunderstand you. And that is a really hard thing to sit with and internalize because you cannot control somebody's perception of you. And inevitably there will
That's
be people
fair.
who are going to watch this and think like, oh my God, like Bethany's going to, become a Satanist because her husband's going to lead her down the path. And like, all kinds of crazy shit. And it takes a lot of like effort and intention and, in my case, therapy to sit with comments and not allow them to like take in what is helpful and discard the rest. And so this is a really vulnerable thing for them to be putting out there and, Bethany included. So I really respect what they've done up to this point.
You can have an opinion. I think I made it pretty clear. I'm not a really good representative of Christianity at this point. So I'm not, nor am I trying to be.
And I don't know what, I haven't seen anything that Paul said that's like putting you down at all.
No.
So I don't know what that is. Another person asked, do you feel that Paul and Morgan approached the interview in as non-judgmental a way as you did?
Probably
What does
not.
that even mean? I mean, we all...
They're inherently biased. Everybody's biased coming into
Yeah.
this conversation. Everybody's going to have a biased discussion. I think, especially for Paul and Morgan, we've seen that their ability to check those things, especially Paul, is not
Yeah.
great.
Paul
so it doesn't.
has certain very strong convictions that probably a lot of times are incompatible with
With what Dave
Dave's
is doing.
views.
Yeah.
make judgments. We all have opinions. I mean, I did not, I told Bethany, it's not like Morgan, because people saying Morgan's judgmental or something. It's not like she left and I was like, judgmental? I'm glad she's gone.
Oh my gosh.
And
I didn't feel like they were judgmental at all, but also they disagree with the way we do things. Like Morgan made it super clear. Like,
I was just about to say, Morgan doesn't like a lot of stuff Bethany does. And I think Bethany does share a lot of stuff that maybe I don't need to know. But I will say what she's doing with the sex stuff is, while there was that one interview that I vehemently disagreed with their position on, making space, like as a person who works with couples and sex in this dynamic, like making space in this community to talk about the impacts of purity culture, like critically important.
Yeah.
So I might not love the way she's doing it,
Maybe she could be a little bit more qualified.
but I love that she's adding to the conversation in a way that maybe Christians will listen to her because she's a Christian. But there are, experts out there, sex therapists, etc.
I can't just have that sort of
why
disagreement.
is that a problem?
Like,
So she doesn't want to have that type of marriage.
she doesn't want Paul deconstructing. Like, well I don't
it's
really
not
want
like-
him deconstructing,
Yeah,
you
it's
know?
like,
This isn't like my
Wasn't her
top, like,
choice.
oh, let me look at all the dreams of what I want for Dave Deconstruction. Like, yes. It's like,
Yeah.
no, of course. That's for me, not what I would want either. But like, I think that, like I said, like, I truly
Yeah. believe
for me that God has us together. And I think we're super uniquely gifted to love each other well in this way.
Plus, I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm plenty judgmental. Yeah, for better or worse, I have a long way to go.
People wanted to know more, like, would love to know more about how y'all differ in your views. The video kept talking about how much you differ on things, but that leaves a lot of room for interpretation.
We differ.
I mean, our view of God, our view of faith, our view of the Bible, our view of that, which is like so much. So,
It's a lot.
Politics.
Behind the scenes stuff that didn't make the cut. Paul and Dave sat down and drank whiskey together.
Yeah.
That wasn't really in there.
That wasn't in there.
Was filming with Paul and Morgan a positive
Wow.
experience? Did it
Aren't
cause
they
any argument?
like? Oh no, I remember somebody was giving Paul. I think somebody was giving Paul and Morgan shit for like drinking, or saying it was like the first 24 hours guy that they did was like giving them shit for drinking. Like, oh my god, guys. Okay.
Afterwards, I think it was super positive.
Yeah, it was very positive, and yes, it caused arguments.
Well, arguments with us, not with Paul and Morgan. but
No.
I wish Paul and Morgan lived closer. Like, we would totally hang out if they lived.
Yeah, I feel like he would be the type of person that would give pushback.
Shut up. No
I mean,
way.
Not that
Paul.
Paul.
Oh.
Oh, how is it hosting Paul and Morgan? How are they different and the same in real life as they are online?
Oh, we were
a
talking
good
about
question.
this.
Oh, yeah. So it seems like so many people on the internet have a problem with Paul specifically. And we've already said, like, they came.
I can't imagine why.
Yeah.
In our house.
Yeah.
Like, they're awesome. And, like,
He cracks me up.
He's
like, I think
hilarious.
he's hilarious.
Yeah, and
He's so funny.
Like, you were inspired by the way he treats Morgan. Like, he's just, like, a great husband. Like, super genuine.
Dude, if that's the case, then you got to do some work with
Yeah.
your online persona, my friend.
Repair your image.
Because it is not coming across that way at all.
And I don't think he's funny.
I mean, he could be like a nice, kind, compassionate person to random people.
Yeah.
But that does not get rid of the issues that the majority of people are going to have.
Yeah.
But I relate to him in the way that when I film for Girl Defined, it's kind of like you have this mode for better or for worse. And it's like you just kind of get into this like camera mode. And I think, Paul, you have that too. You get camera mode.
It's giving camera mode.
And it's fun. And it's kind of like you get in this, like, you're on camera. And so you're kind of over dramatic about stuff. But people take it so, like, weird and just like, can you believe? It's like, it's just you're kind of being, like, over the top for the camera. But in real life, it's like, it's like, if you can meet them and know them, it's like he is the most genuine, like, super caring, like they are people who are going to look out for you, who genuinely want the best for you.
Oh, yeah.
Like, he's a super great friend, an amazing husband to Morgan. Like, they just are, he's like a really, really great, genuine guy. So I think people just look at him through this lens of like, oh, when they see him on camera, because he kind of does the whole like showman thing.
He's
and
such
they're
a
like,
showman.
Look at him, he's just like the worst. And it's like, no, like, we know him. And I would say, like, if you could look at him through the lens of being like a super great, genuine guy, you might be able to see it more in like the showy kind of act.
It's a behind the scenes thing that did happen that wasn't on camera or anything,
Yeah.
but it was a conversation between me and Paul, and it was just him being very kind and encouraging me, and just in a very kind of brotherly sort of way.
It was super sweet.
In a direction.
Maybe that shouldn't have been behind the scenes. I don't
Seriously.
know.
Well, it
They
kind
could
of
have a better...
it calls into question their rigidity, though. Like, the way that Paul was responding in the comments was like, yeah, Dave's not a Christian, blah, blah, blah. And Dave's not offended by that because he's not, which is fair. But I think it does not serve Paul and Morgan for their audience to see them more than tolerating the way that Dave is.
Yeah.
Like, they have like a very rigid audience, as evidenced by anytime they do anything and their audience gets upset about it. And it doesn't serve their brand to be overly compassionate to somebody who's not Christian.
He thought would be helpful for me, and I just have really appreciated that. I appreciated his heart and his care, you know.
For sure.
Yeah.
So here's the comment that I think encapsulates like what the problem is, what people are having a problem with, like what's going on now, like with Paul and Morgan, and then specifically you. And here's the deal: it's like people are so easily offended, and they want to take up people's offenses, and they're like, so this is the comment. If you'd known that Paul and Morgan would have gone on to call Dave not a real Christian, and Paul would have gone on to say that people go off the rails after getting therapy and make a lot of insinuations about Dave and his character, would you still have agreed to do the video? Like 1000%.
Yeah.
And like, we don't care. Like,
well, I mean, what happened? Like, I'm basically agreeing with Paul in the sense that I'm agreeing with him that I'm not a real Christian. Not like
He's not a Christian.
well, and like,
that.
who cares if you choose to go to therapy and somebody else is like, oh, you go off the rails when you go to, like, who cares? Like,
I mean, people are pointing out the fact that the insinuation is that bad things happen because people go to therapy.
And we don't want to contribute to the mental health
That's
stigma
bad.
because people in Christian spaces and religious spaces need therapy just as much as anybody else. And this idea that, like, you go off the rails and, like, therapy leads to deconstruction, like, that's really unhelpful. That's, as a therapist, like, half of my work in therapy a lot of times with clients is deconstructing the beliefs that prevented them from getting therapy in the first place. Like, I can't tell you how many people I've met with that are like, I wish I would have done this years ago. I wish I would have started years ago. And therapy is not a forever thing. Most people aren't going to be in therapy forever. Some people might want to be, and that's fine too.
Yeah.
But just this idea that, like, Dave ended up where he is because he went to a secular therapist or he started going to therapy. It was like, it's bullshit. Like, we don't want to reinforce that rhetoric. That's not helpful.
No.
anyway.
Any more comments or questions?
I mean, we'll probably should wrap it up because it's
Yeah.
late and we have to.
Early, I'm yawning.
I know.
I have to go.
All in. I mean, huge shout out to Paul and Morgan. Go support them on their Patreon. Go follow them on YouTube.com, whatever. Paul and
They
Morgan.
got a hell of a channel.
They're doing such great work. These videos that they're releasing are awesome. I feel
Well, I guess who's doing the editing?
Yeah, they were happy
honored
about
that
the
they came
swing.
and stayed with us and did their video.
It was
And
fun.
who knows with this Dave and Bethany channel,
don't
channel,
start that
whatever
yawning.
it's called. I don't know what the future of it is, but we posted this video.
Who knows? You're a beautiful human being.
That's it.
Bye. Yeah, this is a
All
squeaky
right.
chair.
Oh,
There are going to be people who can't hear us because of the
it's
squeaky
so
chair.
squeaky.
Sorry about that. Hopefully this helps. I'm just like rocking back and forth like, this is a fun show. We're having a fun time.
there's no squeakiness there. I don't know. I don't know what he's talking about. Well, that was really interesting.
Wow. I'm kind of speechless, to be honest. I don't know what I was expecting, but it wasn't that.
Right.
So yeah, this has already been a long video, so I'm going to try to wrap this up
Keep
as
it
much
brief.
as possible. I don't know what I was expecting, but it wasn't that. I was not expecting them to be so honest. I was not expecting them to be so
Yeah.
vulnerable. And so raw and open. This is a very
Touchy-feely. Ugh.
yeah, right. It was very intimate, and I appreciate there are people that are in their situation that are, outside the Funny Snark community, of course, and maybe even in it, who can relate to this a lot. And while I still have issues with a lot of Bethany's beliefs, and that's my personal opinions, having deconstructed Mormonism, I have a lot of respect for how she's handled it, at least as she portrayed in this video, and how her and Dave discussed this. Like, coming from a therapist perspective, like, this would be very helpful, I think, for some people who are struggling with this in their situation to watch this as sort of like a reference point. Again, this isn't the inside scoop. This isn't we don't see what's happening outside of this, but I do have a lot of respect for how Bethany handled this, and I have a lot of respect for Dave for being so open and honest about it. And
Yeah.
just overall impressed.
It's a hard path to walk,
Indeed.
especially when you're already kind of in the public eye and
We've
they're
been there.
critical of, these kind of opposing viewpoints and things like that. So props to them. I know that's probably been pretty hard. We've been there.
Yeah.
It sucks.
I mean, I hope we fall under the level 1
Yeah.
category. 'Cause
I'd like to be a level 1 hater.
We've been there before. We walked the deconstruction path after being devoted to our religion for our entire lives and sacrificed for many, many years and did the weird ceremonies in the temple and got married and played by the book, played by the rules, did all the things. And so it's a scary road to walk, but you're not alone in that. And I know many of the funny snarker people have also been there as well, have also deconstructed. And so as much as this is a critical space for homophobic and transphobic beliefs, this is also a space where you will find understanding from people who have been there and understand how difficult that path is to walk. And it is not like, I know plenty of Christians who are not homophobic and plenty of Christians who are not transphobic, and those two things do not go hand in hand necessarily. But we also have to remember that everybody goes at their own pace when it comes to their belief systems. And who knows, maybe down the line things will change for Bethany and maybe she'll still be a Christian, but she won't be homophobic. I don't know.
That's the hope.
There's potential, I think, for everyone, even if we don't expect it. And so, again, that's my own biased hope for Bethany, but that's,
criticism without hope for change is really just selfish content making.
Yeah. And so I hope,
all honesty.
I won't say there's never been bitch eating crackers moments that we've had.
Yeah.
But I hope, I have a lot of respect for this, and I have a lot of appreciation as a professional in this space, and also just as a human who's walked the deconstruction path before.
For sure.
And in a relationship context too, our deconstruction journeys were not at the same pace and looked very different. And our relationship is stronger and amazing because of it. But it's a unique kind of path to walk down as a married couple. And so we can relate on that.
Anyway, to wrap everything up, just real quick, if you like us, you like what you're seeing, hit that subscribe button. If you'd like to go further than that, you can become a member of the channel or become a patron. You get the same perks. There's a couple cooler extra stuff integrated with YouTube if you become a member, but content-wise, it's the same. You can also follow us on social media. You can find us at Jordan and McKay. We got TikTok and Instagram. And then you can join our cool Discord if you please, if you fancy. There's cool people in there, conversations to be had and everything like that. You can find the link in the description down below. But anyway, we love you. We hope to see you again soon, and we will see you next time.